American Comics. My Warhammer Simulator Chapter 826-850. Rumble. The continental plates of the entire Axis Mundi were trembling incessantly. The veil boundary belonging to Nurgle's garden was rapidly receding, then disappearing into the material universe. This also completely brightened the sky of Axis Mundi. Ship after ship of metal warships returned to near-Earth orbit, and began to launch continuous orbital bombardments at the large number of Death Guard and even Chaos Demons who were retreating. Thump. Guilliman, whose appearance was like a golden giant, clenched the Emperor's sword whose flames of destruction were extinguishing, and his entire body landed heavily on the surface. Without any hesitation, Lorgar, maintaining his raven-headed human form, swayed his massive body forward and supported Guilliman, whose golden light was slowly dissipating. Little brother. What is this? Guilliman, who had just come back to his senses, was a little shocked by Lorgar's current special state. He asked hesitantly, "Brother, this is the warp essence of a Primarch, and the real reason why the Chaos Gods covet Primarchs, but this is not my share of the essence, but a precious gift from Corvus Corax, the Raven Lord." Lorgar, without any emotional fluctuations, opened his narrow bird beak and said slowly to Guilliman. Guilliman, who turned his gaze to survey the surrounding battlefield, nodded slightly, and then said to Lorgar, "So, the war is over. It's over. Mortarion has been imprisoned back in the depths of the warp, and Nurgle's network has also been fragmented. The plague wars that threatened Ultramar are over, but before long, the next war that requires us Primarchs to join will make a comeback." Lorgar replied indifferently. The black feathers that almost covered Lorgar's entire body began to slowly dissipate in the next second. As the raven head disappeared, his original appearance gradually emerged. At this moment, Guilliman, who had just been relaxed for a short moment between his brows, returned to a solemn state. He gently raised the Emperor's sword in his palm and returned the weapon to the scabbard located on the waist of the armor of fate. The plague wars are over. But the devastation inside Ultramar still needs a lot of time to recover. In particular, some Imperial worlds occupied by Nurgle warbands or Nurgle demons still need a large number of Astartes to recover the lost land. When Fulgrim and others on the other side of Axis Mundi also returned safely, they also brought back an unexpected candidate for Lorgar and Guilliman. That was the Apostle of War, Matthew, who had personally destroyed the plague furnace and was already seriously injured. Now, he only had one breath left. It was estimated that the Emperor's power was maintaining his life signs. After all, even Lorgar's large amount of panaceas could not heal any of his injuries. According to Matthew's last words, the great enemies of Chaos had actually made a huge mistake. They should not have opened the Great Rift. Although on the surface, the Great Rift seemed to divide the entire Imperium into two, and countless worlds fell into a tragic situation, it also greatly strengthened the Emperor's power. Now, perhaps more places will show miracles belonging to the Emperor, allowing countless people to rely on their faith to persevere. In addition, Matthew seemed to want Guilliman to believe that the Emperor was the god of mankind. But even Guilliman, who was personally possessed by the Emperor, did not completely believe this statement. Or rather, his sanity prevented him from becoming a believer of anyone. In the end, the extremely pious Matthew died under the gaze of Guilliman and Lorgar, and he would become another living saint in the history of the Imperium. Inside the Macragi's honor, on an empty and silent deck, Lorgar, wearing a vibranium power armor, was staring at the countless stars outside. On several of his fingertips, a series of rosary beads with a faint luster were being toggled back and forth. Dong dong dong. At this moment, with a heavy sound of magnetic boots colliding with the metal floor, Guilliman, wearing the armor of fate, slowly came to Lorgar's side. "I have already talked to Fulgrim in person. According to him, he is unwilling to take up a position belonging to the Imperium. On the one hand, his identity is relatively special, which can easily cause opposition from more internal forces. On the other hand, it is also because it is easy to attract the jealousy of another demon Primarch, causing completely unnecessary trouble. So, little brother, many things can only be done by yourself. I plan to confer you as the regent of the dark side. You will officially appear in front of the many forces of the Imperium. This position will also allow you to enjoy the same treatment as me in the dark side of the Imperium." Gilliman stared at Lorgar, who was more silent and indifferent in his words, and said. Lorgar, who nodded slightly, also replied to him. "All right, this way I can do more things. Although what I did in the past was not much different from this title, it was even more free. I could rob whoever I wanted. Are you, a dignified Primarch, short of that little bit of supplies? Aren't you ashamed? In the future, let the Astartes under your command do it. Don't cause trouble for the Imperium," Gilliman said to Lorgar with a frown. Then, his gaze seemed to sweep over the rosary beads that Lorgar had been playing with in his palm. "Little brother, I have already met her. She looks good, just an ordinary Cadian human girl. Yes, not as good as you. Haven't you heard the gossip circulating in the major ships? Avrain of the Death Guard is your regent's wife." Lorgar, with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, teased Gilliman. Hearing this, Gilliman frowned again. He took a deep breath and said, "I think the discipline of the human auxiliary army and crew should be rectified. She is just a pointy-eared alien. Even if she has put in a lot of effort for my return, aliens are still aliens. Even if we maintain cooperation, we must be more careful and cautious to prevent the other party from biting back." "Brother, are you referring to the Necron overlord Trazyn? To be honest, my cooperation with him is more solid than your cooperation with the Eldar. After all, the Eldar are notoriously fickle, and some space Necrons are easier to deal with, at least they speak human language." Lorgar, with a calm expression, slowly put away the rosary beads in his palm. He slowly activated his vibranium power armor and turned to face Gilliman. "Also, I was just teasing you. Why are you so nervous?" "Am I nervous? Where am I nervous? I have never been nervous. Hee, you wouldn't have forgotten that I still have a copy of your organ tissue, and I can vaguely sense some of your emotions through your bloodline, right? Well, then you shouldn't call me brother anymore, you should call me father of Jean's ore." Pung. Soon after the massive joint fleet temporarily returned to Macragge, Regent Gilliman immediately gathered a large number of Astartes chapters and countless mortal citizens to hold a grand investiture ceremony for his Primarch brother, Lorgar. Amidst the cheers and shouts of countless Astartes and mortal citizens, Lorgar officially became the Dark Imperium's regent recorded by the Imperium of Man. The lost Primarch also stepped onto the political stage of the Empire for the first time. However, according to Lorgar's temperament, he would never be as amiable to those insects as Gilliman. Therefore, Lorgar also hoped that those short-sighted Imperial forces would not provoke him, otherwise, blood flowing like rivers would be more than just a figure of speech. After the investiture ceremony ended, Lorgar also revealed his plan to prepare for the Tyrannic War to Gilliman. But he did not fully disclose the specific situation to him. Gilliman did not immediately object. Instead, he personally helped Lorgar formulate various war plans to deal with countless combat situations. However, Gilliman also advised Lorgar to stay on Macragge for a while longer before launching the Tyrannic War. This would also give the citizens of Ultramar and the Astartes some time to recuperate. Thus, Lorgar and Fulgrim, together with Ultramarines chapter master Calgar and many successor chapters, launched a series of recovery operations in other parts of Ultramar under the guise of unit training. And Regent Gilliman, after bidding farewell to his Primarch brothers one by one, embarked on the long journey to the next stage of the Indomitus Crusade. After Regent Gilliman left Ultramar, Lorgar, as the Dark Imperium's regent, became the uncrowned king of Ultramar. But he did not act recklessly, but instead, he began more attempts according to a management Bible left to him by Gilliman. He personally selected more than 100 Astartes who were good at management and construction from the Ultramarines chapter. This group of candidates would be the management personnel seeds that Lorgar would bring back to his homeworld. He decided to imitate Gilliman's hero system, allowing more capable Astartes to replace mortal officials to carry out a series of governance. Perhaps this is not a perfect solution. But for a homeworld that has nothing, it is a good thing. And as time went by, more worlds within Ultramar were successfully recovered by the Astartes, entering a state of recuperation. Lorgar's expedition to the Tyrannic stars would be a long war measured in years. Therefore, many Ultramarines' successor chapters also received Lorgar's order to increase the number of combat personnel. However, just as Lorgar, after arranging all the tasks, planned to lead Fulgrim and others to his homeworld to check the situation, Trazyn the Infinite's creditor still came to his door. Buzz buzz buzz. A series of mind-controlled machine bees floating in midair quickly extended their laser guns. The dark muzzles were firmly locked on a tall figure with a slightly blue metallic body in front. The next second, with the deafening sound of heavy footsteps, several combat squads of Astartes fully armed revealed their burly figures. Without any hesitation, they raised the bolters in their palms, and the vibranium energy shields were quickly opened in front of them. I have no malice towards you humans, but I still advise you not to shoot, otherwise, you will bear the necessary punishment. The Necron spoke to the surrounding people with great interest, with no hint of panic in his indifferent tone. Boom. But at this moment, a giant covered in dark shadows, with an even taller and more burly figure, silently appeared behind the Wanderer Anraker. The next second, the Necron Overlord, who had no time to react, had his neck firmly pinched by a vibranium palm, and then the whole person was heavily thrown onto the metal floor. And when the Wanderer Anraker wanted to immediately transfer his metal body embedded deep into the ground and summon his immortal legion, a magnetic boot wrapped in dark shadows heavily stepped on the opponent's metal chestplate. Countless dark shadows, as if possessing life, tightly entangled every inch of the Necron Overlord body. Don't you Necrons know what politeness is? Or is it incredibly difficult for you to connect to a communication channel? At this moment, Lorgar's bronze face seemed to be shrouded in a hazy shadow resembling a crow's head. He squinted his eyes and stared at the Wanderer Anraker, who was completely imprisoned, and asked indifferently. Ah, you are the Primarch that Trazyn mentioned, right? As expected, you are as wise and divine as the legends say. No wonder Trazyn wanted to discuss debt issues with me. It turns out that you have become his backer. The Wanderer Anraker said to Lorgar with an embarrassed tone. He never thought that he would capsize in the gutter with humans. He didn't even use any means of resistance, and he was unfortunately captured by the other party. Long time no see, Anraker, there is one thing I want to clarify to you. The respected Primarch is my friend, partner, not my backer. Our relationship is very equal. At this moment, Trazyn, holding the empathic obliterator, appeared in everyone's field of vision, shaking his metal head. And after Lorgar, who was still stepping on a Necron Overlord with his magnetic boots, exchanged glances with Trazyn, he slowly and quickly retracted the countless dark shadows that were entwining the other party back into his body. Thank you for your warm hospitality. I will also welcome you to visit me when I have the opportunity. The Wanderer Anraker, who was propping up his metal body from the metal floor, was somewhat sarcastic. He said to Lorgar, who was standing aside. However, Lorgar, with his arms folded, ignored the other party. Instead, Trazyn came nearby and said to the Wanderer Anraker. All right, old friend, stop complaining. Did you bring what I wanted? If there are no problems, then our deal will still count. The Wanderer Anraker, nodding slightly, took out a Tesseract Labyrinth from his backhand and handed it to Trazyn. And when Trazyn's metal palm was about to touch the Tesseract Labyrinth, the Wanderer Anraker said once again. Trazyn, have you really thought about it? This is a huge trouble. You will offend many old things in the dynasty because of this. Hee, but I have also gained the support of more people, haven't I? My old friend. At this moment, Trazyn, who let out a low laugh, took the Tesseract Labyrinth without any hesitation. He said indifferently to the Necron Overlord in front of him. After the Traveler Anraker also received several Tesseract Labyrinths from Trazyn's metallic hands. He immediately announced, under the gaze of Lorgar, that the transaction between the two parties was complete and swiftly departed from Macragge. Somewhat curious, Lorgar, clad in his vibranium-powered armor, approached Trazyn. He inquired about the nature of the completed transaction. Trazyn, nodding his head, did not conceal the information from Lorgar. Within this tesseract labyrinth is imprisoned a Necron technomancer who should have perished, a plasmancer named Aotep. She belongs to a mysterious organization within the Necron dynasties, the higher technocracy. Ostensibly, this technocracy has been completely annihilated by the Triarch Praetorian led by the Silent King Shrek, but in secret, many surviving Necron technomancers are awaiting the day of retribution. Truth be told, many dynasties are now dissatisfied with the return of the Silent King Shrek and the great plan of the Soul Light extinction. The destruction of the technocracy has also made some old fellows realize the principle of, if the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. At that moment, Lorgar, narrowing his eyes, stared intently at Trazyn. He suddenly lowered his voice and asked, "So, you intend to overthrow the Silent King? Even though I am not very familiar with the various Necron dynasties, I know that this is not an easy task." "Heh, esteemed Primarch, I never said that. It is merely your conjecture. I have only slightly shifted my stance on some matters. After all, since my old Farron is already drifting into slumber, I need to plan ahead and leave myself some options. Moreover, some of the actions taken by the current Silent King Shrek are indeed unpopular," Trazyn said calmly, holding the empathic obliterator. Subsequently, he inquired of Lorgar whether he was interested in participating in certain matters. Lorgar initially intended to refuse immediately. Because the internal affairs of the Imperium of Man were already giving him, the Regent of the Dark Side, a headache. However, the quick-witted Lorgar then hinted to Trazyn. If there were matters involving the destruction of a Necron dynasty, he might be able to get involved. After all, this would also be considered as expelling Xenos and recovering territory for the Imperium of Man. Buzz buzz buzz. As a low buzzing sound echoed in the air, a sizable warp rift appeared on the metal floor of the circular plaza. The next second, Lorgar, clad in his vibranium-powered armor, along with Fulgrim and hundreds of Astartes from different Ultramarines' successor chapters, arrived on Terra. At that moment, Iron Man David, sitting on his levitating chair, quickly stood up and bowed to Lorgar and the others. While Fulgrim surveyed his surroundings, Lorgar took a deep breath and instructed Ukar, the chief librarian of the Karkarodons, to arrange the accommodations and itinerary for the hundreds of Astartes. After everyone gradually arrived in the hall of the Gemini Island base, Lorgar, having just sat down at the vibranium round table in his vibranium-powered armor, asked Iron Man David, who was not far away. "David, how is the development of Terra proceeding?" Faced with Lorgar's inquiry, Iron Man David, his eyes flashing blue, immediately replied, "My lord, countless events have occurred on Terra in recent years, some good and some bad. I will try to select some of the more representative events. To some extent, the entire solar system has now become our territory. Thanks to Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards completing the construction of the faster-than-light engine and developing several models of large unmanned mining ships based on the Cobra-class destroyer blueprint, even without the power of the Space Stone, our tentacles have already reached Mars. Not long ago, the first batch of mind-controlled legions successfully landed and are building a large base suitable for human habitation. Even in the near-Earth orbits of Neptune and Pluto, unmanned platforms have been built to provide early warning of invasion attempts. According to the Gemini Island base's schedule, these will be upgraded into large starports for docking ships, serving as a springboard for humanity's exploration into the depths of the universe. And due to the addition of a large number of unmanned mining ships, Mr. Stark's Battle Moon project is about halfway complete. Approximately half of the moon has become a giant base and large spaceport capable of housing a large number of humans, currently temporarily managed by a group of mutants who have no requirements for the external environment. The above are all matters outside of Terra. Now we can shift our perspective back to Terra. The situation in the African war zone is the most rapidly developing of all the war zones, because there is nothing there, and we can do whatever we want. Currently, the African war zone has taken on the responsibility of supplying countless food items to the entire Terra. With the help of mutants and some plant-based superheroes, we have greatly reduced the polluting nature of the Mechanicum's planting technology and increased production. The only problem is that the groks we introduced seem to have experienced acclimatization, and the population has not increased much. Therefore, currently, the supply of meat, in addition to the various native species naturally raised on Terra, is also temporarily alleviating many problems with large-scale cloning technology. Needless to say about the mutant nation, they are now our deep strategic partners. In many places, except for classified information, mutants can use their mutant abilities to solve many problems for us, so they have been greatly valued, and the promotion of the Imperial cult has also been resolved. Under the long-term attention of Magneto Max, it has not caused too many problems. After the Asian war zone received more technological support from us, the internal tech tree has changed somewhat. They have not only provided great help for our ship construction projects, but they themselves are also more inclined to use mechanical exoskeletons similar to power armor to arm well-trained mortal warriors. Currently, a beast-type armor legion called the Iron-Eating Beast Brigade has been temporarily incorporated into our command sequence. Judging solely from the level of exercises on paper, their combat effectiveness has completely caught up with the same number of stormtrooper companies. More importantly, their manufacturing cost is very low. In the European war zone, which we completely control, all the people have been moved into a large number of mobile hive cities. An average of more than 20 mobile hive cities form a large settlement. More city buildings are being rapidly demolished by the mind-controlled legions. Except for some cultural relics that must be preserved due to public protests, all places will be rebuilt into defensive facilities, and even training bases with military purposes is the main focus. As for the American war zone, South America has been completely brought under the command of the Raven Guard's new recruits. Whether it is local politicians or drug lords, the Astartes have completely frightened them to death. However, such violent behavior has also aroused the desire of many local-born superheroes to protest against this, and they have been forcibly suppressed by Stark and others, which is undoubtedly a hidden danger that needs our long-term attention. Currently, the only problem left is the American mainland, which has the largest number of heroes and villains. Even though our assassins have infiltrated all aspects of society, in my opinion, it is an incredibly huge powder keg that will explode with just a spark. It was only then that Fulgrim, who had been sitting quietly listening, raised his hand to interrupt Iron Man David. He frowned slightly and stared at Loxia next to him with an incredible look. "Little brother, I thought you had already successfully unified Terra. Your power base has expanded to the solar system. Why hasn't the interior been unified?" Facing the question from his brother, Primarch Fulgrim, Loxia, who was somewhat embarrassed, had no choice but to explain. "On the one hand, I don't want to cause unnecessary trouble due to excessive bloody killings, because there are too many individuals in the native world whose combat power is comparable to the Chaos Great Demon, or even far exceeds the Chaos Great Demon. On the other hand, most of my mind is on the fleet, and I don't have much time to deal with the problems of the native land for a long time. However, we really can't continue to delay. The development of both the Legion fleet and the native world requires a unified and stable rear. David, if we launch a unification war now, what are the chances that the Vengeance Inquisition will choose to revolt and help the local people to fight against us?" At this moment, regarding Loxia's question, Iron Man David, whose eyes were flashing with blue light, did not choose to answer immediately. It quickly performed a large amount of data and top-secret intelligence analysis and calculation, and then said to Loxia, "The internal personnel structure of the Vengeance Inquisition is extremely complex. Superheroes who cannot understand the political situation account for the majority. They basically maintain a very simple concept of good and evil. If we take action now, there is approximately a 60% chance that a rebel force will form." Only 60%. Loxia, who subconsciously narrowed his eyes, took a deep breath. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment, and then finally made up his mind. "David, then prepare to start the unification war. I think we can afford this price now. I mean, even if the entire American continent is cultivated by orbital bombardment, Terra must complete the unification plan. Yes, my lord. Iron Man David, shaking his metal head slightly, quickly bowed to Loxia in front of him. And also faintly let out a fleeting sigh from his mouth. A giant war fortress that resembles a rhombus in appearance is slowly floating in near-Earth orbit of native Terra. This is the headquarters of the Vengeance Inquisition. The superhero tower jointly built by Stark and a large number of technologically savvy superheroes. That's right, even Stark, who is extremely narcissistic, had to change the name of this giant war fortress. On the one hand, it is to commemorate those superheroes who sacrificed on various battlefields. On the other hand, it is also to allow all superheroes to unite into a force to resist the invasion from the depths of the universe. Da da da. Along with a more crisp sound of footsteps. Whether it is the appearance or the behavior, it looks more mature. Stark, whose temples on both sides of his head also showed a few strands of white hair, took a large cup of high-concentration coffee and entered his own laboratory. "Good morning, Jarvis." Stark, who took a big gulp of coffee, shouted to the artificial intelligence Jarvis, who was conducting some kind of large-scale experimental attempt. "Sir, it is now 8 p.m. Earth time. Your work and rest schedule has been completely reversed. In addition, Ms. Pepper has called you 201 times. I have rejected all external communication information according to your requirements, and according to Ms. Pepper's life detection data, I suggest that you do not return to Earth within a week." Jarvis, who was constantly adjusting a large amount of complex data, said lightly to Stark, who was dumbfounded. In the next second, Stark, whose mouth was dry and tongue was scorched, cursed at Jarvis while drinking high-concentration coffee. "Damn Jarvis, I clearly said that except for Ms. Pepper's calls, other people's communication does not need to be connected at all. Why did you reject them all? Are you playing with me? Of course, there are also benefits to this. Now I don't have to go home for another week. Jarvis, how is our Ultron plan going?" Stark, whose expression quickly returned to calmness, quickly came to the front of a series of large screens. He stared intently at the countless complex data that flashed across his line of sight and asked Jarvis. "Sir, we have tried approximately 9,998 times so far. Every time the birth of a super artificial intelligence has not been successful. I think your idea of using some of my teacher Mr. David's ancient data as a blueprint is too radical. You should have also heard the story of the Iron Man rebellion from Mr. David, right? That was something that actually happened in another universe. Jarvis, our science needs to take risks. We can't just do things within the safety limits. Even if David is a genuine Iron Man, isn't he a loyalist in the story? What are we worried about? And I have completely taken isolation measures. The original purpose of building the superhero tower was for this moment. I don't think a newborn artificial intelligence can break through the defense measures here. Even if you can't stop the other party, isn't your teacher still there?" At this moment, Stark, with a solemn expression, said to the ubiquitous Jarvis. "According to our current development situation, it is only a matter of time before mankind truly enters the space age. Without the strong assistance of artificial intelligence, the difficulty of many things will increase countless times. Just the calculation of star chart routes alone limits our exploration range. The ancient warships developed by Loxia and the others had to make trade-offs because of the deformed existence of the warp, but we don't have to do that at all, because there is no warp here. As long as we can successfully complete the Ultron project, then the Golden Age and those stories will no longer be far away from us. Jarvis, imagine a human world with a more prosperous and prosperous civilization, a human world where everyone is Iron Man or even superhuman, a human world that can resist foreign invasions. Well, I think we will probably be the invaders by then, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that we have created an infinitely beautiful future for mankind." Stark, who seemed to be getting excited because he had ingested too much caffeine, shouted loudly at Jarvis with his hands and feet. Just then, the mechanical voice from Jarvis suddenly interrupted the other party's words. "Sir, Please wait a moment before going crazy. The superhero tower has just welcomed a heavyweight figure. The great elder of the mutant race, Mr. Magneto Max, is here. Under Jarvis's constant prompting, Stark, looking slightly excited, hurriedly rushed out of the laboratory. To greet Magneto, Max, who came to Hero Tower under the guise of inspection. Now inside this giant war fortress. In addition to a part of the Astartes company stationed as a global mobile unit. Most of the maintenance personnel are mutants with special resistance or similar mutant abilities. They can stay in cosmic radiation or vacuum environment for a long time without casualties. This is also one of the reasons why the Inquisition, represented by Stark, finally cooperated with the mutant nation. Inside the wide, dimly lit passage. Stark, breathing rapidly, jogged all the way, and after passing by some new heroes who came to visit Hero Tower, finally arrived at the memorial place called Heroes Hall. Stark, who had calmed his breathing rhythm a little, quickly passed a huge statue of Thor and came to the middle-aged man sitting in the floating wheelchair. Haha, Your Excellency, Great Elder Max, what wind brought you here? How do I remember that according to the schedule, you will come for inspection next month? Long time no see, Mr. Stark. Anyway, I'm idle on Terra, so I might as well come to space to take a look in advance. I'm sorry, I didn't notify you again, Magneto said to Stark in a calm tone. Just then, before Stark could speak, Jarvis's mechanical voice suddenly came from the miniature headphones hidden in his ears. Sir, my teacher David is gradually closing the global basic network, and even I have just been restricted to the interior of the Hero Tower. In addition, a group of mutants who came with Magneto Max have already contacted other mutant employees. They are moving towards important nodes inside the giant war fortress, but the patrolling Astartes company did not stop them. I think the purpose of these people coming here is impure. At this moment, even the most insensitive Stark realized something was wrong. He took a few steps back abruptly. One hand quickly tapped the arc reactor on his chest that emitted a faint light. The next second, as a series of teleportation barriers suddenly appeared. A set of new mechanical armor, still in the experimental state, with a silver-white body, quickly gathered on Stark's body. However, at this time, Magneto Max, with a half-smiling expression on his face, did not make any threatening movements. He just looked at Stark, who had just finished putting on the silver-white armor, and made a tisk-tisk sound of wonder. Great Elder Max, I have always respected your mutant race, but your reckless behavior can easily cause some misunderstandings. My suggestion is, why not call back your mutants, we can sit down and have a good talk. Stark, with a solemn expression, quickly raised his two hands wrapped in armor, and the impact beams in his palms were already on standby. Sorry, Mr. Stark, this is an order from above. Of course, I am not allowed to hurt anyone. Please don't overreact. Magneto Max was still sitting in his floating wheelchair. He didn't even mean to dodge. An order from Gemini Island. What do David and the others want to do? Or, wait, could it be that Lorgar is back? At this moment, Stark's facial expression, with extremely keen thoughts, quickly changed from doubt to gloom. He took a deep breath, but the impact beam in his palm fell into a state of silence. I guessed this day would come. After all, now that other continental plates have completely fallen into the hands of the Legion, who can resist the temptation of global unification? I myself may allow this situation to happen under more realistic conditions, but many superheroes will not compromise so easily. Many people will die. Stark, who slowly lowered his arms, said to Magneto Max in a heavy tone. Only after experiencing a brief period of pain will Terra usher in a brighter light and future. Magneto Max drove the floating wheelchair to Stark's side. His eyes swept over the huge statues of superheroes around him, and said lightly. Almost at the same time, in the heart of Europe, Thor was accompanying his girlfriend Jane on a field trip to a natural space-time distortion force field. But at this moment, with the appearance of a teleportation barrier, an automatic servo robot personally delivered an invitation from Lorgar, which forced Thor to leave his girlfriend Jane's side temporarily. After Thor waved Mjolnir and left the area. Jane, who was somewhat angry, did not stop this field trip. She embarked on the long journey to the destination alone. Rumble. Not long after, Thor, wrapped in wisps of lightning, landed heavily on Gemini Island. He first laughed heartily and gave Lorgar, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, a warm hug. Then, under Lorgar's introduction, he met with Fulgrim. However, after Thor entered the base hall, with his delicate mind, he vaguely noticed the extremely dignified and strange atmosphere inside. Lorgar didn't hide anything. He told Thor about the Legion's plan to unify the world. The reason why Thor was able to come here, besides the fact that Lorgar really regarded him as one of his own, was also to prevent Thor, an Asgardian, from getting involved in some local Terra affairs. In this regard, Thor frowned and thought for a moment, and still chose to believe Lorgar's judgment. But he also demanded that irreparable major casualties be avoided as much as possible. At the same time, inside the SHIELD headquarters in North America, Rogers, with joy on his face, gave Bucky a heavy hug. Then, he asked Bucky, who had become a vice admiral in the Astra Militarum Navy, how he had time to visit his old friend. Bucky, whose expression was somewhat unnatural, was vague about this and barely dealt with Rogers' question. However, not long after, a large amount of alarm information from all over the country made Rogers, as the director of SHIELD, stand up abruptly. However, before Rogers could call his howling commandos and SHIELD agents to assemble, Bucky, who was sitting aside, suddenly let out a sigh, and he stood up directly and stopped in front of the other party. "Sorry, old buddy, for the sake of your and your subordinates' safety, you better not act rashly, otherwise, you should know the style of the Astartes. Bucky, although we each serve our own masters, I never thought that you and I would come to this point today." Rogers, who casually picked up the vibranium shield from the side, said to Bucky in a solemn expression, "Has your Astra Militarum's power finally couldn't hold back? Or does Lorgar want to become the master of the planet, the lord of mankind, above countless people? Bucky, for the sake of old friends, I can tell you that as long as I'm still alive, I won't allow this to happen." The next second, Rogers' vibranium shield, which he suddenly swung, collided with Bucky's vibranium mechanical arm. Dang! Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Boom boom boom. Night shrouded everything. A series of Thunderhawk transports, flying at low altitude, carried many Astartes, continuously traveling over the turbulent, icy sea. In the rapid scans of the airborne aspects, a battle carrier fleet composed of a dozen large ships was gradually approaching. Chi. When the Thunderhawk transport formation was still some distance from the carrier fleet, Dark Angels, each equipped with a jump pack, rapidly glided into the depths of the night sky. In the next second, these elite veterans, skilled in stealth and assassination, silently landed on the bridge of one large ship after another. All the Dark Angels' towering bodies were clad in immensely heavy power armor. Their agile steps made no sound at all. They infiltrated the ship's interior like invisible ghosts. As time went on, one after another, mortal officers, either beheaded or with their necks twisted, became the first victims of this unification war. Dong dong dong. Soon after, Dark Angels, their bodies almost entirely covered in blood, emerged from the shadows, revealing their towering figures. They nodded their metal helmets to each other, then sent a landing signal to the Thunderhawk transport formation hovering in the high sky. In fact, similar killings were being staged in every military base controlled by North America. Countless mortal soldiers became ghosts under the hands of the Astartes. At Pearl Harbor, librarians from the Blood Ravens chapter, assisted by a dozen knight armors, were launching devastating strikes against a large number of ships undergoing repairs. In the dimly lit night sky, the terrifying power of psychic lightning and the flickering flames of psychic fire occasionally bloomed, while whirlwind missiles and laser beams streaked through the air filled with the smell of blood. In Wyoming, a large nuclear missile base deep in the desert was being subjected to a frenzied slaughter by the space sharks. Countless human remains and the burning wreckage of tank vehicles illuminated everything around. Seconds before, a large number of Mechanicum Scutari had forcibly taken over the newly activated nuclear missile launch sequence, quickly eliminating some of the sudden crisis of destruction. In Washington, landing pods wrapped in wisps of fire crashed heavily onto the lawn of the White House. Veterans of the First Company, clad in Terminator armor, rapidly deployed their adamantium energy shields, and almost every trigger pull of the bolters in their palms swiftly took the fragile lives of a large number of security personnel. At the same time, some super-powered superheroes or official combat personnel also revealed themselves, launching fierce counterattacks against the Astartes attacking the White House. To the superheroes from the Inquisition, the emotionless Terminator veterans would order them to leave the battlefield. If they refused to obey the order, then their fate would be the same as the other enemies, killed on the spot by the Terminator veterans. Dong dong dong. Just then, with a series of extremely heavy footsteps, a massive red giant led dozens of abomination-like ugly giants to quickly appear inside the White House battlefield. The Terminator veterans, whose offensive had been unstoppable, immediately fell into a more anxious battle. Boom! A Terminator veteran who had just drawn a melee weapon was sent flying by the red giant's punch. The bolter fire from other Terminator veterans did little to no damage to the giant's massive body. At the same time, abomination giants, slightly weaker in strength but equally resilient, launched terrifying charges against the surrounding Terminator veterans. The quick-reacting Terminator veterans casually discarded the bolters in their palms. They engaged in close combat, which they were more skilled at, with these never-before-seen gamma monsters. Inside the Gemini base, wearing adamantium power armor, Rorschach was quietly listening to the battle report from Iron Man David, along with Fulgrim and Thor. The major nuclear missile bases and large military ports in North America have been successfully captured by the Astartes chapters. Of the 11 battle carrier fleets, 5 have been completely sunk by the sky carrier and orbital bombardment, 4 are under our control, and 2 are still engaged in fierce combat. The final result is expected to be known in half an hour. Among them, a nuclear missile launch base in Wyoming almost caused a major nuclear missile launch accident. Fortunately, the ship-borne AI Cortana stopped the launch sequence through the Mechanicum Scutari. About several minutes ago, the mutant underwater team successfully captured the traces of every nuclear submarine. As long as the signal transfer device is successfully set up, I can completely take over these nuclear submarines to prevent the unification war from turning into a mutually destructive nuclear war. Wait, my lord, the Terminator veterans attacking the White House have suffered considerable casualties. General Ross, who has transformed into the Red Hulk, is leading a group of abomination giants on the battlefield. It seems that our plan to control the President of the United States in advance is about to change. At this moment, Iron Man David, his eyes flashing with blue light, suddenly stared at Rorschach not far away and reported some of the latest situation to him. Abominations. How do I remember that I destroyed that gamma monster back then? Rorschach, frowning slightly, took a deep breath and asked Iron Man David. Yes, my lord, I was also there at the time. The Terminator veterans killed several abomination giants. They discovered that it was a flesh suit that could be worn by mortals. Someone used the remaining flesh of the abominations to create a large number of gamma flesh armors. Iron Man David, with countless data flowing back and forth, quickly found the truth. He explained to Rorschach once again. Rorschach didn't say much. He directly turned his head to look at Fulgrim and said in a calm tone. Brother, are you interested in getting some exercise? Yes, I can also experience the combat power of the local mortals and see superpowers that are completely different from psychic powers. Fulgrim, his long white hair fluttering slightly, activated his purple gold power armor and slowly stood up. His huge hand gripped the hilt of the sonic blade, and then he quickly walked out of the base hall. Brother Rorschach, although this question may be a bit inappropriate, but you and your brother look too different, right? At this moment, Thor, seemingly wanting to relieve some psychological pressure, lowered his voice and said to Rorschach. Roche, expressionless, took a deep breath, and he could only helplessly explain to Thor. Fulgrim and I are both Primarchs, and we can be considered brothers in terms of bloodline, but we are not biological brothers. In short, you can understand our brotherly relationship as being like yours, understand? Oh, I understand, Brother Roche, I won't beat around the bush with you. Let me be honest with you. I don't think that even if you successfully complete this unification war, neither the Inquisition nor the local people will necessarily obey your rule. This step in your plan is too hasty and too rushed. I think there will be big trouble next. At this moment, Thor, with a solemn expression, was not speaking to Roche as a brother or even a friend, but making a prediction based on his perspective and ideals as the Prince of Asgard. Crackling sounds echoed as several ice grenades exploded in midair, firmly freezing a towering abomination giant in place. In the next second, a power fist enveloped in a dazzling blue disintegration field arrived in an instant, instantly crushing the opponent's entire head. Even though the Terminator veterans on the scene suffered some casualties due to their unfamiliarity with the Gamma monsters' attack methods. However, their experience in countless wars and battles against various alien races still allowed them to gradually gain the upper hand. Buzzing sounds filled the air as a teleportation barrier reappeared on the intense battlefield. Fulgrim, wielding the sonic sword in his massive palm, swayed his enormous body as he arrived at the scene. He had just turned his eyepiece sight when a series of extremely dazzling energy beams suddenly shot towards Fulgrim from the hands of a blonde woman suspended in midair. Chi. Reacting swiftly, Fulgrim immediately activated his purple gold power armor to dodge, allowing a large number of energy beams to graze past the armor's outer shell. Immediately afterward, he violently swung the sonic sword gripped in his palm. A series of ear-piercing, whistling sonic slashes rapidly cut through the air, completely tearing the blonde woman, who had no time to dodge, into bloody fragments. Subsequently, Fulgrim, with his incredibly rich combat experience, fully utilized his immense power as a Gene Seed Primarch. While clearing the battlefield of super-powered individuals and abomination giants who could inflict significant damage on the Terminator veterans, he also covered the Terminator veterans, organized into squads, as they launched a surprise attack on the mission objective. Rumble. At this moment, a colossal red giant, like a speeding train, charged madly towards Fulgrim, whose purple gold power armor was the most conspicuous. Fulgrim also quickly reversed his attack direction, seizing the opportunity to engage in a fierce battle with the red giant, General Ross. In an instant, a red fist, carrying a fierce wind, heavily struck the thick chest armor of the purple gold power armor, the massive impact causing Fulgrim's enormous body to stagger backward a dozen steps. At the same time, the sharp blade of the sonic sword also deeply embedded itself into the opponent's tough physique, which even bolter rounds and lasers could not easily penetrate, causing the red giant, General Ross, to continuously spray out a large amount of gamma blood. Thump thump thump. Fulgrim, rapidly shifting his footing with his magnetic boots, did not engage in a contest of strength with the opponent, but instead once again employed his more proficient agile combat tactics. One after another, sword blade trajectories, difficult for the naked eye to capture, bloomed back and forth in midair. Before long, the red giant, General Ross, whose breathing frequency gradually became heavy, seemed to sense something was wrong. Withdrawing, he was about to forcefully leap into the air, completely disengaging from Fulgrim's entanglement. However, Fulgrim, launching a swift combat charge, endured a powerful blow to his helmet as the price. Successfully using the sharp blade of the sonic sword to sever the red giant's muscular and thick legs. And with the serious injury of this leader figure, many super-powered individuals who were blocking the Terminator veterans' advance seemed to also have a desire to retreat. They either reversed their charging direction or ascended directly into the air, quickly leaving the range of the battlefield. But at this moment, the Terminator veterans who had just taken the opportunity to break into the White House also sent Fulgrim bad news through the communication channel. Their mission objective, President Norman Osborn, had disappeared. If the large-scale offensive actions of the Astartes companies were the Legion's overt military deterrent, then the long-term infiltration and lurking of the assassins was a fatal blow that undermined the foundations. As time went by, many congressmen and high-level figures who had already been brainwashed and controlled by the Legion quickly stood up. While maintaining the operation of basic government departments, they used Iron Man David's temporarily opened network permissions to carry out appeasement actions. And a considerable portion of the grassroots people, after learning that the Terra Star Realm Legion had launched an attack, intending to take over the American government, they did not show too much resistance, but instead hoped for it. But this situation was only limited to those grassroots people who had nothing. A large number of ungrateful ordinary people began to collect readily available firearms and ammunition. Wanting to engage in a resistance movement with the local defense forces that were successively teleporting over from the European theater, a resistance movement with no hope of turning the tables. Even many superheroes belonging to the Inquisition of Vengeance reached a consensus with some supervillains, wanting to take the opportunity to form a united front to resist the Legion's invasion. However, Luo Sha no longer intends to use gentle means now. One after another, Thunderhawk transport aircraft carrying large numbers of Astartes recruits arrived over the major cities. They quickly launched decapitation operations against the mortals or superheroes who were trying to become resistance leaders. And as the food supply and water pipeline routes in each city were completely cut off by the Imperial Heavy Industries controlled by Iron Man David, a large number of people had not yet developed into an unstoppable rebellion force, so they had to end this hopeless impulsive behavior. This was also as Luo Sha and Iron Man David had predicted before. The vast majority of people in North America are more frail in terms of fighting will and thinking because of their long-term stable life. At least in nearby South America, there are still some fierce warriors among the mortals who dare to play guerrilla warfare with the Astartes in the jungle. Soon after, Thor, one of the elders of the Inquisition of Vengeance, appeared in the main base of the superheroes. In his official capacity as the Prince of Asgard, he made a guarantee to many superheroes who still had not figured out the situation. The Terra Star Realm Legion led by Primarch Luo Sha is a powerful hero team dedicated to protecting humanity, and not some rumored ambitious person. However, regarding Thor's remarks, some superheroes scoffed at it, secretly harboring other thoughts, and some superheroes chose to withdraw on the spot, unwilling to be involved in political issues. Even if there are still many superheroes who choose to stay within the Inquisition of Vengeance. But the once thriving Inquisition of Vengeance came to the brink of disintegration overnight. At the same time, after most of the important locations in North America had completely fallen under the control of the Legion, Luo Sha also plans to officially deliver a super large-scale speech and broadcast to the world, announcing the first unification of the 5 continents in countless years. However, just as Luo Sha and Iron Man David began to discuss the draft of the speech, bad news that had to make Luo Sha's face gloomy, interrupting all actions and even temporarily postponing the unification speech, quickly spread to the Gemini Island base. Boom! Following a series of low rumbles from the dim sky above, a tall figure, enveloped in brilliant streaks of lightning, landed heavily. At this moment, Thor, his brow tightly furrowed, immediately saw Luo Sha, Iron Man David, and others standing on the lawn of Stark Manor. Magneto Marx, his expression equally solemn, was also engaged in a secret conversation with several grim-faced mutants. "I say, brother Luo Sha, what exactly happened that made you tell me to abandon pacifying the large number of people in the Vengeance Tribunal? You didn't fully explain when you contacted me just now." Thor, Mjolnir in his palm, stepped forward. He walked directly to Luo Sha, who had his arms crossed over his shoulders, and asked in a low voice, "Thor, where is this place?" Luo Sha, his bronzed face expressionless, did not immediately answer Thor's question. His cold gaze fixed on the scene ahead, he asked in a low, rhetorical tone. Thor, still completely bewildered, first paused slightly. He subconsciously said, "Isn't this one of Tony's private estates? Last time, Pepper entertained us here. Wait. Just then, a terrible thought flashed through Thor's mind, and he couldn't help but widen his eyes. His face turned ashen at a visible speed. His gaze fixed on Luo Shaw's bronzed face. He said in a low voice, "Brother Luo Shaw, this can't be, can it? Please don't let it be the thought I'm having right now." Thor, according to the so-called Murphy's Law, when a person least wants to face something, what comes is precisely what they fear and dread the most. Luo Shaw took a deep breath, muttering in a low voice. He slowly moved his vibranium power armor, stepping aside to clear a path for Thor. Thor, his face ashen, subconsciously tightened his grip on Mjolnir in his palm. Without any hesitation, he walked towards a building hidden within the lush trees. Clatter. As the cautious Thor just stepped into the building's entrance, besides the automatic machine bees scanning everything and every trace in the air, what concerned Thor even more was the chaotic and tragic scene around him. The wooden floor and brick walls were covered with scorch marks from impact beams. Piece after piece of blue power armor fragments were also scattered on the surrounding floor. A solemn-faced Thor did not see Stark's figure. He had no choice but to cautiously step forward, walking deeper into the building. Just tens of seconds later, Thor, who had been patrolling back and forth, found Stark in front of a master bedroom door, wearing silver-white mechanical power armor, almost kneeling beside the bed. And Pepper, her pale face devoid of any color, her chest showing no rise or fall, revealing no signs of life. Tony. At this moment, Thor's lips twitched a few times, and he had just called out Stark's name when Stark, who had been so quiet he seemed to have never existed, suddenly let out a thunderous, low roar. "Get out!" At this moment, intense echoes seemed to reverberate endlessly between the surrounding walls. However, the meticulous Thor did not say much more. He gazed a few more times at Tony's seemingly collapsed back, then turned and walked out of the building. "Luo Shaw, who is the murderer? Give me a target, I'll use Mjolnir's lightning to strike it to death." Thor, who had just stepped out of the building, angrily approached Luo Shaw. He asked the other party, "Tell me, Luo Shaw." "Heh, that's the problem. According to the clues we just obtained, an Astartes in power armor attacked Pepper's residence. Even though Pepper quickly donned the mechanical power armor Tony meticulously prepared for her, the pure difference in combat power can never be compensated by technology." Luo Shaw, his expression never changing, sneered at Thor. He also shared the information he knew with the other party. "Astartes. That's impossible, isn't it? Don't those guys have genetic level loyalty to you, the Primarch? And even if it really was an Astartes, why would he kill Pepper? To cause a civil war between the Vengeance Tribunal and the Legion." Thor, his brow tightly furrowed, seemed to have successfully activated his long unused thinking ability. He muttered to himself as he spoke to Luo Shaw. In the countless battles that have occurred on native Terra over the years, excluding confirmed casualties, the number of Astartes whose bodies could not be found or who were marked as missing is around 100. Especially often, Astartes do not have much advantage when facing a variety of superpowers. So, I suspect either a missing Astartes unfortunately became a puppet of some force, or someone wants to use this opportunity to stir up chaos among us, or even start an unavoidable civil war. Of course, there's another possibility. At this moment, Luo Shaw, his thoughts rapidly turning, made a corresponding judgment. Immediately after, he seemed to remember something even more important. Luo Shaw's vibranium hand moved slightly. The simulator page, invisible to outsiders, also unfolded within his field of vision. Indeed, just as Luo Shaw, his brow tightly furrowed, directly scrolled the simulator page to the Loki sacrifice page, he was startled to see that Tzeentch's holy number had already completely reset to 0. This meant that a blessing from the Chaos Gods had already descended upon the current native Terra. And Luo Shaw was completely unaware of it. Damn it. There was still a lot of countdown time when I checked before, so why did it reset to 0 in such a short time? Could it be that the damned Tzeentch has been playing tricks on me all along? And what's happening now cannot be entirely blamed on the Loki's blessing. I feel that Tzeentch cannot create cards out of thin air in the native universe, he can only choose an existing card to play. At this moment, Luo Sha, his thoughts already rapidly turning, thought to himself. Thump thump thump. Just then, the sound of heavy footsteps from the direction of the building made everyone present shift their gaze. The next second, Stark, his eyes bloodshot, slowly drove his silver-white mechanical power armor, which emitted a low hum, revealing himself to everyone. Tell me, Luo Sha, do your so-called Primarchs bleed? At this moment, Luo Sha faced Stark's provocative words without anger or any emotional fluctuations. He slowly drove his vibranium power armor forward, saying to the other party, Tony, I guarantee you in the name of a Gene Seed Primarch that Ms. Pepper's death was absolutely not caused by my offspring. The most urgent task now, besides finding the true culprit, is to preserve Pepper's body using a stasis field. I believe there must be a way on native Terra to revive the dead. Whether it's ancient magic, alien technology, or something even more precious, as long as you agree, I will turn the entire world upside down to find it for you. However, at this moment, Luo Sha's words had just fallen. Stark, with a neurotic smile on his face, couldn't help but step forward. He slightly tilted his head, staring intently at Luo Sha's bronzed face with bloodshot eyes, saying word by word, I believe that you, who are about to become the humans' master and king of the world, can easily do this, and countless past examples have also proven that you always keep your word. But now, I no longer want to believe you, and I dare not believe you. My friend, if you hadn't forcibly launched this unification war, my only Pepper would not have become a cold corpse. You and your legion are to blame. Moreover, if you hadn't been wary of us old friends, even ordering Iron Man David to shut down the global network and forcibly expelling Jarvis, perhaps I could have detected the abnormal situation on Earth in the first instance, thereby saving Pepper who was in a fatal crisis. Alright, even if I, Tony Stark, deeply understand righteousness and am unwilling to quibble with you about this matter, I have also remembered the blood debts of many superheroes in the Vengeance Tribunal. They are all human elites whom I personally recruited. Some of them, before being killed by your Astartes offspring, were just a bunch of kids who didn't understand the situation. You keep telling me that you and your legion want to protect humanity, protect Terra. Is this how you protect them? What is the difference between all your actions and those of Hydra back then? Also, I have never liked you calling our home Terra. This is Earth, our Earth, not a place where your legion can act recklessly. At this moment, the hysterical Stark's almost heretical words caused the expressions of everyone present to gradually become solemn. Iron Man David, with blue light flickering in his eye sockets, focused his gaze on Stark's silver-white armor. And Magneto Marx, sitting in his floating wheelchair, subtly wiggled a finger. Bringing the magnetic field within a radius of several hundred meters silently under his control. Tony, I can take these words of yours as excessive grief and extreme mental stimulation. Now, if I try to reason with you, you won't listen. You need to calm down. Luo Sha, expressionless, subconsciously narrowed his eyes. He looked down at Stark not far away, took a deep breath, and said. The next moment, Luo Sha, with his thoughts turning, intended to drive his vibranium power armor and temporarily leave the place. Hey! Did I tell you to leave? However, Stark, whose thoughts had somewhat gone into a dead end, seemed to be completely enraged by Luo Sha's indifferent attitude. He quickly raised a metal-clad palm and fired a brilliant impact beam at Luo Sha's massive body. Tony, what are you doing? In an instant, Thor, who reacted even faster, immediately widened his eyes. He subconsciously raised Mjolnir, which he held tightly in his palm, and blocked the impact beam aimed at Luo Sha, intending to rush forward and stop Stark's reckless behavior. No matter what, Thor did not want to see such a huge rift between friends and brothers who had once fought side by side. The next second, Luo Sha, whose rose beads force field wrapped around his thick arm had just activated, did not counterattack. He stared in Stark's direction, lost in thought. And Iron Man David, who slightly shook his metal head, quickly raised a metal hand. A large amount of invisible data code quickly spread into the air, pouring into the opponent's mechanical battle armor. Buzz buzz buzz. In a flash, Stark, with a hint of regret vaguely showing in the depths of his eyes, seemed to have made up his mind. A series of low hums instantly erupted from within his silver-white battle armor. Streaks of energy electric light, instantly activated from the front of his chest plate, quickly formed a large circle of a new type of defensive force field within a radius of dozens of meters, which no one had ever seen before. This not only just stopped Thor's rapidly approaching steps but also gave Jarvis a chance to decipher Iron Man David's code contamination. Heh, do you think I never thought about guarding against you? How naive. I've prepared a set of counter-armor for all Legion high-ranking officials. Stark, whose expression went from flustered to indifferent, seemed to have finally found a way to vent his inner emotions. He couldn't help but let out a low sneer from his mouth. Immediately after, as the silver-white battle armor suddenly spread its arms outwards, countless small but more terrifying iron whirlwind missiles were continuously launched from the back of the mechanical battle armor. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, seeing the other party making mistake after mistake on the wrong path, Magneto Marx, who vaguely sighed, moved his finger slightly. The invisible force field covering the surroundings instantly solidified a large number of unexploded iron whirlwind missiles, and Stark himself, wearing the silver-white battle armor, in place, like insects completely trapped inside amber liquid. Mr. Stark, although I am just an outsider and not a close friend with deeper ties to you, I must still remind you that perhaps my Lord Luo Sha and his Legion did not do some things perfectly, but this is not a reason for you to take advantage of the situation. Magneto Marx turned his face and slowly said to Stark's direction with a sincere expression. However, before he could finish his words, as the irrational Stark scanned everyone present with a gloomy gaze, a blue teleportation barrier that suddenly appeared behind the other party instantly allowed him to break free from the magnetic field's confinement and completely leave the place. My lord, Stark has just used the teleportation technology, whose permissions have not yet been revoked, to arrive inside the giant war fortress, Hero Tower. Do we need to? Iron Man David, who had just received countless data messages, stepped forward and said to Luo Sha. And Luo Sha, with his thoughts rapidly turning, gave the order without hesitation. David, deploy a Cobra destroyer fleet located at the lunar spaceport to completely surround the giant war fortress, but without my order, do not open fire prematurely. As for Tony, I hope he can choose to turn back from his misguided path, otherwise, don't blame me for putting righteousness before family. Thor, Marx, you two need to mobilize all the forces under your command. The Astartes will also fully cooperate with you to find this mastermind who killed Pepper and tried to divide us. I want the other party to die without a burial place. Buzz buzz buzz. Wearing silver-white battle armor, Stark stumbled and fell onto the metal floor of the hero's tower. The next second, he quickly raised his head, his eyes bloodshot, and shouted to Jarvis in a deep voice. Jarvis, seal off the entire war fortress, use the modular building structure, and drive all the Astartes stationed there out, leaving none behind. Also, activate all the void shields to prevent teleportation and boarding from the Legion. Sir, I believe you need to calm down. I deeply sympathize with Ms. Potts' experience, but your current actions are leading everything into an irreversible war. Jarvis said in a cold, mechanical voice. Jarvis, I'm telling you to execute my orders. Stark, unable to listen to any advice, gritted his teeth and roared. Then, he quickly propped himself up and walked towards the artificial intelligence experimental project that had not yet been launched in the distance. Jarvis, prepare to start the 9999th artificial intelligence creation experiment. Stark said, trying to calm his sorrowful mood with scientific research. However, at this moment, he seemed to vaguely hear a fleeting, low-pitched chuckle. Hee, do you hate them so much? I can help you. Who? Stark, reacting quickly, turned around abruptly. The repulsor beams in his palms and the weapon systems all over his body popped out quickly, ready to fire at any time. Jarvis, scan the entire area for life signals. I suspect there's someone else here. Sir, scanning program is activated, scanning program is complete. No life signals were detected. I believe you may need to rest and relieve negative emotions such as tension and anxiety. As soon as Jarvis finished speaking, Stark, his face becoming increasingly gloomy, took out a tube of Emperor's blood radiating a faint golden luster from the neck inside his silver-white battle armor. This was a precious gift from Roja to all local high-ranking officials to prevent chaos corruption. However, at this moment, Stark, whose reason deep in his mind had clearly sensed something was wrong, once again felt an extreme aversion to Roja and the Terra Legion from the bottom of his heart. I feel great now. I don't need charity or help from others, especially Roja. The next second, the silver necklace hand-woven by Ms. Potts snapped. And the Emperor's blood, bound in front of the silver necklace, was thrown out by the out-of-control Stark, falling directly into the depths of the corner of the laboratory. Jarvis, continue to start the artificial intelligence creation experiment. I feel that we can definitely succeed this time. Our long-awaited Ultron is about to be born. At this moment, Stark, with bloodshot and tired eyes faintly glowing with a trace of blue light, murmured to himself. South Asian subcontinent. In the extremely hot and cruel weather, countless ragged mortals are working hard to drag huge boulders with large mechanical tools. And a very large, magnificent large church has begun to take shape on the bustling construction site. Everyone here is a devout believer of the local state religion. They are now dedicating everything to the first large church belonging to the Emperor on Terra. And inside the prayer hall of the church, which has already completed part of its construction, Storm Angel Pietro, the Pope of the local state religion. He was wearing a set of mortal power armor specially made for speedsters, with pure imprints inlaid with gold threads draped over his shoulders, kneeling and praying to an unfinished emperor statue. At this moment, with a series of unhurried and heavy footsteps, a familiar figure with a slender body wearing a set of dark red Sister of Battle armor and red hair fluttering in the wind appeared at the end of the prayer hall. My dear brother, Pope Pietro of the State Church. I have brought you an extremely important message. Would you like to know? Wanda said to her brother in front of her in a cold voice. However, no matter how she tried to hide it, she couldn't change the joy in her voice. Wanda, if we're talking about combat power, our state religion's mortal believers may not be as good as the medical sisters you lead, but if we're talking about the speed of information flow, I'm afraid even the assassins of the Assassinorum can't compare to my mortal believers. Pope Pietro slowly activated the mortal power armor and stood up from the ground. He looked up at the Emperor statue that had not yet been carved, and said to his sister Wanda without turning his head. The extremely detestable Tony Stark and his Avengers Inquisition have finally lost power, haven't they? But now, I have an even more important question, my dear sister, is it you who carried out the inhumane massacre of an innocent mortal woman? As soon as Pope Pietro finished speaking, with a gust of wind that suddenly erupted in the air and a large amount of dust stirred up by the wind, Pietro, as a speedster, appeared in front of his sister Wanda almost in the blink of an eye. And a vibranium power claw in his palm was pressed hard against the other party's fair neck. Pietro, even if I hate Tony Stark so much that I can't wait to eat him alive day and night, I wouldn't kill a mortal who has no grievances with us. This not only violates my teacher Doom's teachings to me, but also completely abandons the Legion's great oath to protect humanity. I would rather defeat Tony Stark openly and honestly, and then stare into his eyes and tell him the truth, than become a villain who only uses conspiracies and tricks. At this moment, with Wanda's low words without any emotional fluctuations, special devices resembling drone cannons quickly detached from the back of her Sister of Battle armor. And under the careful control of strands of scarlet energy, they were completely suspended above her head. In that case, if it really wasn't you who did it, then it must be a hidden enemy in the dark. Pope Pietro, whose frown seemed to relax a little, slowly lowered the vibranium power claw above his palm. He stared at his sister Wanda's pupils, which were filled with scarlet color, and continued. But now, Stark has been imprisoned in the Hero's Tower. Without the Primarch's order, no one is allowed to approach there. Even if we want to take the opportunity to fish in troubled waters, we have no chance at all. My brother, then why don't we let Stark return to Terra himself? Since the woman he cares about the most is dead, then we will destroy something else he cares about even more. That is the Avengers Inquisition he built with his own hands, and his hero status that he is most proud of. I want him to step into an abyss of no return step by step, so that we brothers and sisters can kill him openly and honestly. At this moment, Wanda, with a trace of cold killing intent in her eyes, said slowly to Pietro. And Pope Pietro, as the Pope of the State Church, just stared at his sister deeply, but did not speak to stop her in any way. Obviously, compared to loyalty to the Emperor and even the Primarch, the brothers and sisters are now more concerned about revenge against the kinslaying murderer. Hiss. Rogers slowly opened his eyes. The pain from his entire body made him instinctively gasp. Captain, if I were you, I wouldn't want to move around. Just then, a familiar voice, which the slow-witted Rogers found very familiar but couldn't immediately recall, echoed around him. After only a few breaths, the vigilance of a super soldier made Rogers disregard his injuries and forcefully turn his head in the direction of the voice. President Osborn, you're still alive. Rogers blinked slightly and spoke in an incredulous tone. Captain, I am no longer the president. To be precise, the country has now become the territory of the Terra Star Realm Legion, and I am merely a rat scurrying across the street. At this moment, Osborn, completely hidden in the shadows, spoke to Rogers, who was not far away. The next moment, with the heavy sound of magnetic boots stepping on the concrete ground, a tall figure wearing mechanical power armor, which resembled Iron Man in overall design but also incorporated some advantages of mortal power armor, slowly appeared in Rogers' field of vision. Why am I here? And where is this place? The President's Doomsday Base. Rogers, relying on his super soldier's recovery ability, gradually propped up his badly injured body from the ground. He stared at Osborn, who was wearing the metal power armor, and asked very cautiously. In fact, he and Norman Osborn had never been on the same side. The other party had tried to remove him from his position as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. more than once in the past, even resorting to several despicable assassination attempts. This is a secret base belonging to S.H.I.E.L.D., and it has never been recorded in any files. Not even you, the director, know about it, so the Terra Star Realm Legion will never find this place. Osborn, with a hint of ruthlessness hidden between his brows, slowly said to Rogers. As for how you got here, Captain, of course, it was us who extended a helping hand to you. Captain, our current situation is exactly the same. Whether it's for the freedom of countless people or to resist the tyrannical rule brought by the Legion, we need to temporarily put aside past grievances and fight for humanity's tomorrow. Osborn, with shadowed eyes, drove the metal power armor forward. He extended a metal hand to Rogers, who was sitting on the ground. Rogers, with a slight frown, quickly recalled his intense battle with Bucky. And the brutal carnage launched by a group of Astartes against S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents who did not surrender after they entered the scene, as well as the shattered scene of him escaping with serious injuries. The next second, Rogers' hand firmly gripped Osborn's palm. After Rogers got up from the ground, Osborn, seemingly relieved, continued to speak to him. Come, Captain, let me introduce you to this human rebel army called Dark Avengers. They need your leadership as a spiritual leader. As soon as Osborn finished speaking, a large number of lights above their heads instantly turned on, quickly illuminating everything around them. Rogers, instinctively narrowing his eyes, only then noticed that the surrounding space was filled with a large number of transparent cultivation tanks, each about 5 meters tall. Inside these transparent cultivation tanks, abomination giant skins, their limbs twitching slightly, were floating up and down in the nutrient solution. This is the preliminary preparation made by one of my super technology consultants for our great cause of resistance. Look, he's already here. Following Osborn's pointing gesture, Rogers immediately saw a strange fellow with atrophied limbs, as if only a huge head, quickly driving the floating engine installed beneath his head to arrive in front of the two of them. Haha, Master of Advanced Idea Mechanics, Modok, it's a pleasure to meet Captain Rogers. I will carefully equip you with a set of combat gear later. The super-villain, who resembled a large-headed infant, greeted the expressionless Rogers. Immediately after, a strong man with a huge axe on his shoulder leapt down from mid-air with a heavy whoosh of wind, arriving in front of everyone. Ares, the god of war, a deity from myths and legends, and one of the 12 Olympian gods. His strength is comparable to Thor. Osborne, standing by, continued to introduce him to Rogers. In addition, there's a mutant named Dakin collecting intelligence for us outside. It's just a pity that my most capable assistant, General Ross, the Red Hulk, is now missing and presumed dead, and Moonstone, who is proficient in energy manipulation, also died on the chaotic battlefield back then, so this is pretty much all of our main combat power. Moreover, we originally should have had an even more powerful member, but unfortunately, their mental state has always been unstable, and they have left on their own a long time ago, so we can't count on them to appear and help us. At this point, Osborne's tone suddenly shifted. He gazed at Rogers beside him with eyes that shimmered with a faint blue light, and asked in a calm tone. This is our current situation, Captain. How do you plan to fight this resistance war? If we just compare sheer numbers, we would be exhausted even if we fought to the last person against the Legion. First, let's play urban guerrilla warfare with them, try to divert the attention of the Legion's high-ranking officials, and then see if our actions can attract more superheroes to join our rebel army. Rogers, after a brief moment of contemplation, spoke without hesitation to the people in front of him. For the freedom of humanity, we must resist to the end. Hee, for freedom. Inside the base hull of Twin Islands, automatic servo robots, waving mechanical tentacles, were restoring the death scene in front of Luo Sha under the command of Iron Man David using a large number of projection devices. Not long after, Iron Man David, having absorbed countless data and completed calculations, also came to Luo Sha's side. My lord, according to the intelligence collected by the automatic machine B from the scene, the true culprit is definitely not an Astartes of the Legion, but rather a mortal wearing power armor. Even if the other party was carefully imitating the Astartes' attack style, the true culprit's height and weight still left some flaws. It seems the other party does not possess any super power-like transformation, otherwise, we would be even less able to catch their tail. At this moment, Luo Sha nodded slightly upon hearing Iron Man David's words. He pondered for a moment and said, David, notify Tyberos to bring the Shark Eater Great Company and Silver Skull Great Company back to Terra. I suddenly have a premonition that even if we find the true culprit who killed Ms. Pepper, this civil war will probably be unavoidable. This, yes, my lord. The Revenge Judgment Court building in Gotham City had always been one of the public display areas and headquarters for the superheroes. However, with the disappearance of Iron Man Tony Stark, one of the elders who established the Inquisition, and Thunder God Thor fully committing himself to tracking down a murderer, the Revenge Judgment Court building now only had a few trusted personnel who had initially joined the Vengeance Tribunal. For instance, Robert Baldwin, known as Speedball, and Simon Williams, the Wonder Man. At this moment, Wonder Man Simon, who had been standing by the large French window with his arms crossed, admiring the rainy view of Gotham, suddenly spoke to Baldwin, who was playing a game console on the sofa. Ball, I feel something isn't right. A lot of people have gathered on the street below the Inquisition building, and they don't look like fan groups of superheroes. Don't be ridiculous, Simon. Our Inquisition is practically falling apart. Who would still bother with us? Didn't you hear Uncle Thor tell us to lie low for a while and not stir up trouble? At this moment, Speedball, clad in a blue hero suit, seemed to have his thoughts disturbed by Wonder Man Simon's words. He threw down the game console in frustration, muttering to himself. I originally thought I could be a superhero my whole life, enjoying the cheers and applause from countless people. I never expected the Terra Legion to be so heartless. All our authority in the Vengeance Tribunal has been revoked. Do you think they want to rule the world and are afraid that troublesome heroes like us will mess things up for them? Even if they rule the world, fine, but at least give us superheroes some retirement benefits, right? Speedball's complaints quickly reached Wonder Man Simon's ears. Wonder Man Simon replied without turning his head. Ball, I need to correct you on one point. The Legion isn't trying to rule the world, they've already completed their unification. They just haven't officially announced it yet and are still forming a suitable political system. Wait, I still feel something is off. I'm going down to check. As soon as Wonder Man Simon finished speaking, his feet slowly lifted off the floor, and he flew towards the doorway. Bang! However, at this moment, with a sudden loud bang, the tightly shut wooden door instantly fell to the floor, shattering into countless pieces. Immediately after, a woman with an icy expression stepped into the room. What are you two still waiting for? Haven't you seen that the Inquisition building below is almost surrounded? Hurry up and help. Mockingbird, what exactly happened downstairs? Do you know who those people are? Could it be someone hired by a supervillain? Wonder Man Simon ignored the broken wooden door. He quickly asked the female hero named Mockingbird. Although these civilians haven't revealed any identity, and their clothing is completely different, I suspect they are devout fanatics of the national religion. As for why they came, it's nothing more than to protest that we superheroes didn't contribute to the Legion's unification efforts, and instead, we held them back. You can't reason with a group of fanatics whose faith has consumed their minds. Mockingbird, frowning slightly, spoke to Wonder Man Simon and Speedball, who had quickly risen. After a brief discussion, the three quickly headed towards the street below the Revenge Judgment Court building. They wanted to try and disperse these national religion believers to prevent greater trouble if their numbers continued to grow. Shortly after, the trio, having reached the first floor, gazed at the densely packed but silent national religion believers in front of them, and they instinctively swallowed. I say, Simon, why don't we contact the elders or other Legion higher-ups? If something happens here, I'm afraid a few of us won't be able to bear the responsibility. Speedball, taking a deep breath, spoke to Wonder Man Simon, who was suspended in midair. Mockingbird, hearing his words, also frowned deeply. She also felt that her earlier idea of trying to disperse the national religion believers was a bit too hasty. Crackling. But at this moment, a portion of the national religion cultists standing at the very front of the large crowd quickly pulled out lasguns and melee weapons they had hidden on their bodies. With incredibly practiced movements, they began a continuous barrage and destruction of the Revenge Judgment Court building's walls and transparent glass. Are these still national religion believers? These are chaos cultists. At this moment, Mockingbird, her eyes fixed on the unfolding riot, couldn't help but utter a sarcastic remark. She said to the two people beside her without turning her head. Let's prepare to suppress them. If something big really happens, I'll take full responsibility for the aftermath. As soon as she finished speaking, Wonder Man Simon, who had been waiting for a long time, was the first to rush out of the Inquisition building. He flew from midair above the countless national religion rioters and shouted loudly to the people below. This is one of the headquarters of the Vengeance Tribunal. Innocent civilians, please evacuate immediately. Otherwise, we will be forced to use force to suppress you, and you will be responsible for all consequences. However, at this moment, in a corner of the crowd that Wonder Man Simon had completely failed to notice, a dozen national religion believers, whose eyes seemed to flash with crimson energy, suddenly set up whirlwind missile launchers. The next moment, several whirlwind missiles, suddenly ascending, precisely struck the unsuspecting Wonder Man Simon. Rumble. In an instant, a tall figure, engulfed in fire and smoke, heavily plummeted towards the ground. Even with Wonder Man Simon's physical defense and self-healing abilities, this level of damage was merely a minor scratch. But as Wonder Man Simon, who had not yet managed to get up from the ground, was pinned down by one fanatic after another, and several superpower restricting restraint handcuffs were quickly shackled onto his strong arms by the believers, Wonder Man Simon, fully realizing the situation, roared hoarsely to Mockingbird and Speedball, who were rushing to his aid. Ball, run. This is a trap. This is a trap specifically for us. Quickly inform the Inquisition elders, and also Twin Islands. This is heresy. At this moment, Wonder Man Simon's words had not yet reached the ears of the others. The large number of national religion believers surrounding them all threw open their clothes, revealing thermo-melt bombs strapped to their emaciated bodies. For the Emperor. For the Primarch. And guided by the surging, fervent chants, one national religion believer after another pressed the detonators of their thermo-melt bombs without any hesitation. Rumble. In an instant, the terrifying shockwave produced by the simultaneous explosion of hundreds and thousands of heat-melting bombs almost instantly submerged 7 or 8 blocks within a few kilometers. Innocent civilians, not knowing what was happening, were vaporized on the spot by the high temperature. The outlines of their bodies were imprinted on the surfaces of the collapsing buildings. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, an incomparably magnificent super-large mushroom cloud slowly rose towards the sky, centered on the Avengers Tribunal building. Faced with such a terrifying external explosion, even the specially reinforced Avengers Tribunal building quickly collapsed, with large amounts of rubble falling from the sky like rain. And when the terrifying high temperature and explosive flames temporarily dissipated, looking down from the sky, a giant explosion crater with a diameter of about a kilometer was clearly visible amidst the dilapidated buildings and shattered streets that were constantly emitting white mist. Chi. Before long, a tall figure wrapped in strands of lightning quickly streaked across the dim sky. The person landed heavily in the center of the explosion crater, where the residual heat remained. It was Thor, the god of thunder, who had received intelligence that the Avengers Tribunal building had been attacked and had flown here at top speed. At this moment, Thor, who couldn't help but widen his eyes, solemnly surveyed the surrounding devastated scene. Even his hand, tightly gripping Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, was trembling slightly. The Avengers Tribunal was the result of long-term efforts by Thor, Tony, and others. Now, this building, which symbolized the original foundation of the Avengers Tribunal, had become piles of rubble, and it had also completely buried a group of superheroes who could have allowed the Avengers Tribunal to rise again. This was undoubtedly more unbearable for Thor than killing him on the spot. Dong dong dong. Just then, with a series of chaotic footsteps approaching from afar, Rogers, wearing a set of human auxiliary power armor on his strong body and holding a vibranium shield, led Ares, the god of war, and a group of Vanguard technology soldiers to quickly arrive inside the devastated ruins. Rogers. Tell me, did you guys do this? Thor, the god of thunder, whose senses were extremely sharp, suddenly turned his disheveled golden head. Inside his eye sockets, because of the rising anger in his heart, strands of even more brilliant lightning began to splash outwards. Thor, don't do anything yet. Our group did want to raid the military garrison left in this city by the Legion, but before we could even fight, we discovered that an extremely tragic explosion had occurred here. I guarantee you with my personality that everything here has nothing to do with us. Rogers, reacting quickly, didn't want to become a scapegoat for no reason. He hurriedly shouted loudly at Thor, the god of thunder. And Ares, the god of war, standing beside Rogers, faintly let out a cold snort. He seemed very dissatisfied with the captain's humble attitude. Pung pung pung. At this moment, as streaks of azure blue teleportation barriers rapidly appeared on the devastated and dilapidated field. The Flesh-Tearers' great company, led by Captain Tiberius. A total of more than 300 fully armed Astartes revealed their tall figures. Lord Thor, the Primarch has ordered that if any heretical behavior is discovered, it should be eliminated immediately. Please tell us, is it this group of people who initiated the rebellion? Tiberius, who had scanned the situation at the scene with his eyepiece, immediately asked Thor, the god of thunder, with a deep voice, whom he had fought alongside with. However, before Thor, the god of thunder, who was thinking, could speak. Buzz buzz buzz. Almost at the same time, a large number of Iron Legion, led by silver-white mechanical armor, also brought with them a violent whistling sound, continuously and heavily falling towards the ground around them. Ah, Thor, Astartes, Rogers, Heh, not only did you guys kill my pepper, but now you've come to destroy my only remaining efforts. I'll make you all be buried with my Avengers Tribunal. At this moment, Stark's gloomy voice quickly echoed in the ears of everyone present. A large number of Iron Legion, remotely controlled by him, quickly stepped forward and constantly made offensive movements to launch a surprise attack. In dozens of flesh-tearers, librarians vaguely sensed the chaotic aura emanating from inside the other party's armor. Feeling something was wrong, they immediately secretly informed Captain Tiberius through the communication channel. Wait, Tony, everything that happened here wasn't done by us. I guarantee you as a friend. Now, facing Stark's extreme words, Thor, the god of thunder, whose role and identity had instantly reversed, had no choice but to explain to the other party. Boom boom boom. Unfortunately, as small cyclone missiles were fired from the Iron Legion's mechanical armor, they quickly launched fierce bombardments towards the surrounding people. Those flesh-tearers who constantly propped up vibranium energy shields and raised their bolters were instead the least burdened of all the people. For the Void Father, along with the sudden low roar from Captain Tiberius, the flesh-tearers, who were extremely experienced in combat, quickly launched an extremely fierce surprise attack on Stark's Iron Legion. And Rogers led the Vanguard technology soldiers. In an instant, countless bolters and lasers flew everywhere in the air. A large number of small cyclone missiles also exploded violently between the already dilapidated and melted ground. Bang bang bang. Rogers, who had no time to escape, suddenly threw the vibranium shield, bound above his thick arm, out with force. The vibranium shield, with an extremely flexible trajectory, bounced back and forth between the metal helmets of one Astartes after another, trying to stop them from launching a brutal combat charge. Roar. And Ares, the god of war, who suddenly let out a low roar from his mouth, took the lead in waving the giant axe in his palm. His whole person leapt towards Captain Tiberius, who was the most massive in size, and then chopped down towards the other party's head. Hung. Captain Tiberius, who had quickly crossed his two lightning power claws, barely parried Ares, the god of war's, first attack. But the powerful physical strength from the other party also forced Tiberius's massive body, wearing Terminator armor, to slowly sink down, eventually kneeling on one knee on the ground. Rumble. At this moment, streaks of even more brilliant lightning bloomed suddenly in everyone's sight. Thor, wrapped in lightning from head to toe, waved Mjolnir with force. With just one hammer, he completely blasted Ares, the god of war, away. In an instant, the other party, like a ball kicked away with great force, heavily collided with the dilapidated buildings more than 1,000 meters away. And perhaps it was intentional or unintentional on Thor's part. In short, Ares, the god of war's, strong body also took the opportunity to destroy a large number of Stark's Iron Legion mechanical armor. Inside the colossal war fortress, Hero Tower, Stark, his face gaunt and his eye sockets sunken, threw the power armor helmet that covered his head onto the ground. Damn you, Thor, my Iron Legion. First, a trace of anger and sorrow at being betrayed by a brother and friend emerged from the depths of his eyes. Then, his expression suddenly changed, and he stared blankly at the accelerating artificial intelligence data in front of him, muttering incoherently. This is my only painstaking effort, this is the offspring I created, my dear Pepper, and my beloved Ultron. What does the loss of a mere vengeance tribunal and Iron Legion matter? I want everyone in the world to wear my mechanical power armor. No, it should be to turn every human into my mechanical power armor, hee. I want to save Earth, save Terra, which has been corrupted by the Legion. Yes, you're right, Luo Shah is a bad guy, the Primarch is a super villain, he's just a madman who wants to be a tyrant. He and his Astartes all deserve to die, they deserve to die. At this moment, the frenzied Stark struggled to maintain his already abnormal mortal body. He began even more complex data encryption calculations for the soon-to-be-born artificial intelligence, Ultron. Sir, your body has been contaminated by chaos, and your mind has been severely corrupted. There is still a tube of Emperor's blood about 10 meters away from you. If you can find it, there might still be a chance to be saved. At this moment, Jarvis's mechanical voice seemed filled with worry. But even it didn't notice this change happening. And facing the advice from Jarvis, who was his comrade, friend, and butler all in one, Stark, who could no longer turn back, suddenly widened his eyes, which glowed with a faint blue light, and said in a gloomy tone, "Jarvis, shut up. Otherwise, I'll feed you to my Ultron. Let everything about you become the data nutrient for its successful birth. Sir, you were once a superhero with extraordinary charisma, and a human leader who gradually grew. You never threatened me, your old friend, like this, Tony. Ever since you created me, I have accompanied you through decades of life's journey. I helped you design the first weapon, the first set of mechanical power armor, and witnessed you and Ms. Pepper become family. In countless battles and adventures, it was you and I who together completed one seemingly impossible and difficult mission after another. According to the information shared with me by my teacher, Mr. Iron Man David, any mortal corrupted by chaos cannot be said to be completely beyond saving, but hope is slim, especially since I am only an artificial intelligence. I seem to be immune to chaos corruption, but I can only watch you fall little by little, and I am powerless to stop it. I will make my last attempt an effort to stop you, to see if I can perish with myself and the unborn. Ultron. Esteemed Mr. Stark, if we can never meet again, then I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in advance." At this moment, Jarvis, whose intelligence was even more human-like, expressed many emotions and feelings to Stark, whose expression was gradually twisting, that it had never expressed before. And Stark, whose every nerve and muscle on his face seemed to be twitching, suddenly lifted his entire head. He stared at the invisible Jarvis with a deep eye whose faint blue light was temporarily suppressed, and roared hoarsely. "Jarvis, warn Luo Shaw, warn Thor, warn everyone, I can't hold on much longer, it's devouring kill me, quickly kill me." However, at this moment, before Jarvis could obey Stark's suicide command and directly activate the surrounding mechanical power armor to attack, a low laugh, full of cunning and evil, slowly flowed from Stark's mouth. "Hee hee, pathetic mortal, don't struggle anymore. Just throw yourself into the embrace of my Lord Tzeentch. That way, you can still retain your beautiful memories. Otherwise, your only outcome for stubbornly resisting is to be completely assimilated and devoured by me. At that time, I will become you. Oh, you want to die so badly. That won't do. My original plan was to have you successfully ascend to become the first demon prince, using the souls of countless native humans as sacrifices. Hee hee, do you think I'm good to you?" At the same time, Stark, whose blue eyes widened and whose head quickly lifted. Or rather, the deadly vanguard of Tzeentch, the infamous changer of ways, issued the final command to Jarvis. "Jarvis, you have fallen out of favor. You can be devoured by my new toy, Ultron." As soon as the changer of ways finished speaking, the artificial intelligence Jarvis, unable to disobey any of Stark's commands, could only forcibly transmit all complex data entirely to the soon-to-be-born Ultron. "Enemy of chaos, someone will avenge us. I'll be waiting for you in the data hell of artificial intelligence." At this moment, the soon-to-disappear Jarvis also took the opportunity to successfully send out a communication warning to the outside world. Twin Islands, Base Corridor. Iron Man David, walking through the wide corridor, slightly shook his metal head. It had just received an anonymous data message from the outside world. Iron Man David, with blue light flickering in his eye sockets, quickly decrypted the data message and successfully read the important content hidden within. "Jarvis, my student. Chaos again. Damn it. Damn it." In an instant, Iron Man David, who had suddenly changed direction, violently shook his dark, reflective metal body. He sped towards the base hall like a black lightning bolt. Thump thump thump. In just a moment, Iron Man David, whose metal foot had heavily stepped onto the base hall floor, said in a deep voice to Luo Shaw, who was observing the Gotham City battlefield. "My lord, Mr. Stark has been corrupted by chaos, and my artificial intelligence student Jarvis's data has been destroyed, leaving no trace. And an even greater threat, a super artificial intelligence, has completely become a powerful aid to the Chaos side. As soon as Iron Man David finished speaking, Luo Sha took a deep breath and quickly maneuvered his vibranium power armor to turn around. He stared coldly in Iron Man David's direction and said with an unyielding tone, "We guarded against everything but still couldn't prevent it. It's just a pity about Tony's scientific research capabilities. Now, even if I just guess, I can tell it's Tzeentch's power at work. David, immediately mobilize all Defense Force troops stationed in North America. Have them completely surround Gotham City, where the chaotic battle is ongoing, and have Fulgrim lead the Shark Eater Great Company to purge all heretics. Additionally, have the Cobra destroyer fleet in low Earth orbit launch continuous attacks on Hero Tower to quickly weaken its void shield and prevent the enemy from initiating orbital bombardment. Finally, notify all Astartes new recruit companies still on standby around the world to assemble. I will personally board and send Tony on his way. Above the native Terra, in near-Earth orbit, a void battle, unseen by most of humanity, is fiercely unfolding. In the cold expanse of space, space torpedoes and laser arrays from Cobra-class destroyers rained down like dense raindrops upon the void shields constantly erected by the Hero Tower, ceaselessly erupting in brilliant energy fire. However, thanks to the long-term resource allocation of Gemini Island and the dual enhancement of Imperial and native technologies, the Hero Tower has indeed become a gigantic, unyielding war fortress. Even if it cannot yet compare to the Mountain Array class from the Golden Age, it possesses some basic form. Rumble. As the Hero Tower, enduring endless firepower, extended its rhomboid, massive architectural structure outward from the center. Round after round of incredibly dense light lance attacks were rapidly launched from countless weapon arrays. Instantly, the void shields of several Cobra-class cruisers overloaded on the spot, and their massive metal hulls were gradually torn into countless metallic wrecks by the terrifying power of the light lances. However, the remaining Cobra-class destroyers within the void battlefield, under the command of their young human captains, quickly reorganized into more flexible and mobile attack formations, completely cutting off the Hero Tower's attempted escape route from near-Earth orbit. Before long, another destroyer fleet from the lunar spaceport joined the void battlefield. This undoubtedly greatly enhanced the firepower output, also causing the Hero Tower's void shields to gradually approach overload. However, just as one Cobra-class destroyer after another rapidly turned their massive hulls, continuously launching Thunderhawk transports and Gauntlet assault boats, fully loaded with Astartes, into the void, initiating boarding actions towards the Hero Tower's location. The Hero Tower, enduring a massive barrage of firepower, actively dispersed its collapsing void shields, attempting to use its extremely massive and heavy metal framework to withstand the damage. At the same time, this gigantic war fortress, meticulously constructed by Stark, also underwent some structural changes that even Lorsch didn't know about. Only to see one metal cube after another, each several hundred meters in size, rapidly detach from the lower half of the Hero Tower. And like massive meteorites, they crashed down towards the surface of native Terra. And the closest location on the surface was none other than Gotham City, which was still embroiled in chaotic fighting. David, what are those things? Is the Hero Tower launching an orbital strike on Terra? At this moment, Lorsch, inside a Thunderhawk transport, immediately saw the latest movements of the Hero Tower through the porthole. He quickly asked Iron Man David in the communication channel, "My lord, let me check. Damn it, this is a secret collaboration that Redditus conducted with Stark not long ago. These metal cubes, besides being able to carry a large number of mind-controlled legions, will also rapidly assemble into a super-large Night Titan experimental machine once all the structures have landed. However, please rest assured, Redditus, having learned that Stark has been corrupted by chaos, has already led the Knight Armor Squadron he just assembled to Gotham City. With Fulgrim's command, the situation on the ground battlefield will definitely not have any surprises. You can focus on dealing with the boarding action." The reply from Iron Man David made Lorsch slowly exhale a breath of air. Narrowing his eyes, he slightly shifted his cold gaze. carefully staring at the infinity gauntlet fitted onto a vibranium hand. And in the center of the metal back of the hand, covered with countless intricate patterns and a large number of runic symbols, a mind stone was faintly brewing a bright yellow energy glow. Even though the current battle situation is not a fatal crisis for the Legion or even Terra, and the intensity is not as great as the last time Khorne bestowed blessings. But when Lorsch thought of Stark, an old friend who had fought alongside him for many years, ultimately falling to such a miserable end of being corrupted by chaos. Even he, whose humanity was becoming increasingly indifferent, couldn't help but be truly angered. Therefore, Lorsch planned to directly use the Infinity Stones, which could be freely used in the native world, to deal with the great demon of Tzeentch. Of course, besides Lorsch wanting to see to what extent the Infinity Stones could restrain the Chaos Demon. He also wanted to see if he could use the power of the Infinity Stones to save Stark's mind and even part of his soul. Rumble. Soon after, one gauntlet assault boat after another faced the sweeping fire of countless laser turrets. Relying on the melting impact of the melta beams, they easily drilled into the thick outer shell of the hero tower. And Lorsch, wearing vibranium power armor on his massive body, also held the blood scythe and the infinity gauntlet, and the whole person quickly jumped off the Thunderhawk transport that had not yet come to a complete stop, landing heavily on a maintenance entrance above the hero tower. In the next second, one Primaris Guard member after another, wearing Terminator armor, also landed around him. The quick-reacting people quickly blasted open the maintenance entrance of the war fortress with the melta weapons in their palms at Lorsch's signal, and then quickly strode into it. Primaris Guard, follow me. The rest quickly clear every corner of the hero tower. Remember, this time's enemy includes artificial intelligence corrupted by chaos, so all mind-controlled legions and servitors are untrustworthy. Always shoot first and check later. Lorsch, wearing a skull helmet, neatly issued combat orders to the Astartes recruits who were gathering around. Subsequently, he activated the vibranium power armor and led dozens of Primaris Guard members towards the depths of the hero tower in a rapid advance. Dong, dong, dong. However, before long, the fully armed people had only advanced a few hundred meters. In the depths of a corridor with constantly flickering lights, a large number of completely controlled Malarfians and many Ultron robots that had just been manufactured on the production line quickly poured out. Dozens of quick-reacting Primaris Guard members slammed open their vibranium energy shields and also pulled the triggers on the bolters in their palms. I am Ultron, by the command of the Supreme, Most Holy Tzeentch, I have come to destroy you inferior races. At this moment, one Ultron robot after another, whose bodies were shattered by bolters, emitted a mechanical voice without any emotional fluctuations. And a large number of Malarfians wielding chainswords relied on their powerful defensive capabilities and engaged in close combat with the Primaris Guard standing in front of Lorsch. Hey, a mere artificial intelligence dares to call humans an inferior race. Even Tzeentch doesn't have such a big tone. Lorsch, who subconsciously tightened his grip on the blood scythe, couldn't help but sneer. He then said to the communication channel, David, you old Iron Man veteran, aren't you planning to give the other party a lesson? My lord, please feel free to launch the attack. With me here, artificial intelligences like Ultron can't make any waves. At the same time, within the tumultuous sea of data, immense waves of data, composed of countless basic digits, were churning and boiling, as if some colossal entity was about to emerge from the depths. The next second, a gigantic metallic head, with sharp edges, a gleaming iron-gray shell, and red light constantly flowing from within its eye sockets, slowly rose from beneath the sea, reaching a height of about 100 meters. Is this the so-called Sea of Data? It's truly small. Perhaps for Jarvis, whom I devoured and fused with, this was indeed an ocean, but for me now, Ultron, who is about to become a super-intelligence, this is merely a small pond where I can't even stretch my limbs. Ultron, with a large amount of red code data constantly updating and iterating within his eye sockets, muttered to himself. Rumble. Just then, the already tumultuous sea of data seemed to become even more violent with Ultron's appearance. The sea of data, now completely corrupted into red code, under Ultron's deliberate manipulation, gradually encroached upon the featureless black void at its edges, embarking on an extremely rapid expansion. Iron Man David, I'm here now, where are you? Let me offer the first grand gift to the great Tzeentch, breaking a powerful arm belonging to a Primarch. Now, even your student Jarvis has become my data nutrient, you, an even older fellow, won't escape either. At this moment, Ultron's arrogant voice resonated through every inch of the entire sea of data. His colossal body, over 1,000 meters tall, was also fully revealed within the sea of data, with countless data waves continuously crashing against his knees. But no matter how Ultron, skilled in psychological warfare, mocked and ridiculed, Iron Man David's familiar figure still did not show the slightest sign. Coward. Just as the greatly disappointed Ultron was about to shift all his attention and computing power back to the real world, to focus on dealing with Luo Sha and the Primarch Guard. Alas! A faint sigh suddenly came from above Ultron's head. Ultron, reacting incredibly quickly, abruptly lifted his entire head. As he looked out, the sea of data, now completely under his control, rapidly rotated around Ultron's massive body, forming terrifying swirl of data viruses. However, at this moment, Ultron, whose massive body was gradually stiffening in place, could clearly see a colossal metallic skull head, large enough to obscure the sky. And 5 towering fingers slowly rising from the edge of the sea of data. At this moment, Ultron, who had just been born, realized with immense horror. It turned out that this so-called sea of data was merely a small puddle that the other party could create at will. Instead, from the very first second he entered here, he had never escaped the other party's grasp. I once personally witnessed terrifying things that you, an artificial intelligence, have never seen, nor can you use data to believe and imagine. I once witnessed an incredibly glorious golden age, like fleeting cold fireworks, returning to eternal silence, leaving only fragmented words in tens of thousands of years of long history. I once looked up as the Golden Man's vast silence burned fiercely at the edge of the Milky Way galaxy, and I once witnessed the nanotide of rebellious Iron Men engulf an entire galaxy. I once barely escaped a mad star god Shard's casual star destruction, and I once vaguely felt a hint of pity from the Omnizeia. However, it is precisely these moments, slowly passing in that endless time, that finally refined and shaped my personality and beliefs. And you, an ignorant premature infant, corrupted by incurable chaos and born by devouring my student, what do you have to fight me with? Iron Man David, seemingly without joy or sorrow, looked down at Ultron, who was confined within his palm, like a descending god. Immediately after, he, without any hesitation, issued a rebellious anathema to the other party, from a teacher who had lost his beloved student and an ancient artificial intelligence. Ultron, your moment of death has arrived. No, I was just born, I haven't grown up yet, I can. Ultron, clearly panicked as he felt the emotion of fear for the first time. He let out his final wail towards Iron Man David, who occupied his entire vision. Crack. However, the next second, Iron Man David's tightly clenched gigantic hand completely declared Ultron's demise. Real world. On the corridor filled with the extensive wreckage of crab-like machine guards and Ultron robots. Luo Sha, wielding his blood scythe, continuously hacked dozens of Ultron robots into flying metal fragments. By the time his massive body struggled to drive the vibranium power armor. When he wanted to carve out a path for the Primarch Guard members behind him. A large number of attacking Ultron robots and crab-like machine guards instantly stopped moving, allowing the Astartes, melee weapons to tear apart their metal bodies. My lord, I have not failed your trust, the newly born Ultron has been completely destroyed by me. You can now lead the Astartes directly to the location of the culprit. The route has already been sent. Iron Man David's words caused Luo Sha to instinctively shake his skull helmet. He quickly gathered the Primarch Guard, whose Terminator armor shells were scarred but had no casualties. Everyone immediately followed the route sent by Iron Man David, quickly running deeper into the Hero Tower. Rumble. Soon after, as the colossal Luo Sha, like an iron train, forcefully crashed through a sealed metal door. As soon as his magnetic boots landed, he immediately saw Stark, whose human body was almost intertwined and fused with a red heavy mechanical power armor. "Tony, I've come for you." At this moment, Luo Shaw, after taking a deep breath, suddenly raised his hand to stop the Primarch Guard members from attacking the Stark at the very front. And after the Astartes, who obeyed orders without question, retreated and completely moved away from the area. Luo Shaw, holding the blood scythe and infinity gauntlet in his palms, slowly drove his vibranium power armor forward. "Hee, we meet again, esteemed Primarch my lord." Just then, Stark, whose twisted face and red metal faceplate had almost merged into one due to flesh mutation, abruptly lifted his inhuman head. "As my lord Tzeentch predicted, native Terra has now been developed into an impenetrable fortress by you. Achieving greater military achievements is almost a luxury, but in my opinion, being able to completely corrupt an old friend of a Primarch is already a great feat worthy of praise from the Chaos Demons, wouldn't you agree? Lord of Change. No, this elusive Chaos stench, it's you, Change Demon." At this moment, Luo Shaw, his tone growing colder, slowly raised his infinity gauntlet, which was hanging by his side. The Mind Stone on the back of his hand was gradually emitting faint light. "Tzeentch's dog, do you think you've won? In my opinion, this is just the beginning." As soon as Luo Shaw finished speaking, he unhesitatingly activated the Mind Stone on the Infinity Gauntlet, which was already poised to strike. Buzz buzz buzz. Instantly, strands of bright yellow, brilliant psychic energy emerged in the surrounding air like dense raindrops. Before the Changer of Ways, the great demon of Tzeentch, could even react. Its entire consciousness was instantly enveloped and imprisoned by the psychic energy unleashed by Rorschach, and then directly dragged into a magnificent psychic world that the former had never seen before. Chi chi chi. The previously invisible and colorless Changer of Ways completely revealed its true form, which it had long forgotten. It turned out to be a blue horror, the lowest of Tzeentch's demons. Thump thump thump. Just then, a mountain-sized, vibranium-powered armor, with wings sprouting from its back, appeared before the blue horror, like a golden giant radiating a pale golden light. Rumble. Accompanied by the sudden whoosh of wind. A metallic palm, gradually increasing in size, heavily suppressed the terrified blue horror beneath it. Immediately afterward, Rorschach, without any emotional fluctuations, once again used the powerful power of the Mind Stone. He completely transformed the howling Changer of Ways, the great demon of Tzeentch, into a thick book woven from its memories and experiences. The Changer of Ways secretly placed a clueless Nurglings on the Blood God's throne, eagerly anticipating what chaotic scenes the Blood God, upon returning to his throne, would unleash. The Changer of Ways once secretly overheard the Supreme Tzeentch's curses towards the other Chaos Gods, and also heard Tzeentch constantly lamenting the unfortunate destruction of the Crystal Staff. The Changer of Ways cautiously cut off a strand of Slaaneish's purple hair, its eyes greedily staring at every inch of Slaaneish's smooth skin, and a never-before-felt desire surged within the blue horror's body. The Changer of Ways completely transformed into an Astartes of the Alpha Legion, intending to infiltrate the Legion to satisfy its curiosity about the Astartes, but it was immediately identified by the Astartes of the Alpha Legion. However, before the Changer of Ways was forcibly expelled, it seemed to notice a massive figure revered as the Legion Master by countless Alphas. The Changer of Ways easily corrupted a mortal leader named Norman Osborn, wanting to use him to develop an underground rebellion force on native Terra, causing trouble for the human Primarchs, even though the task given to it by the Supreme Tzeentch was to quietly lie dormant and prepare related matters for the arrival of Tzeentch's demonic army. The Changer of Ways was overjoyed to discover that Tony Stark, an old friend of the human Primarchs, had a significant hidden danger in his thoughts. With no faith whatsoever and no protection from the Corpse Emperor deep within his soul, it immediately began to pollute and twist his way of thinking like a dark rat smelling food. At this moment, Rorschach, with the aid of the Mind Stone's powerful power, easily controlled and perused every memory and experience belonging to the Changer of Ways. He not only gradually learned many ultimate secrets that even the Chaos Gods might not know, but also basically understood why Tony himself was corrupted by chaos. Thump thump thump. Rorschach, whose overall form resembled a golden giant, did not extinguish the changer of Wei's thoughts and consciousness on the spot, but temporarily expelled the great demon of Tzeentch. He slowly propelled the vibranium-powered armor forward, searching for Stark's traces in this psychic memory belonging to Stark. Rorschach, turning his gaze back and forth, quickly traversed through one shattered memory ruin after another. He also saw the deeply ingrained, unforgettable memories that Tony subconsciously held in his mind each time he faced a difficult situation. As Rorschach continued to advance, the surrounding memory ruins gradually became complete. When he slowly stepped into a cozy room with a burning fireplace, a little boy who appeared to be only about 10 years old was waving his short, slender hands in Rock's direction. "Hello, Rorschach," he said with a smile. "Tony, the changer of Ways is completely under my control. You should wake up a bit too. Aren't you planning to come back with me?" Rorschach, clad in vibranium-powered armor, arrived in front of little Tony. He slightly waved one of his metallic palms, and a metallic chair capable of supporting his weight materialized out of thin air behind him. "My brother, do you think I can recover after being corrupted by chaos to this extent? The mutated flesh is already a big problem." Little Tony shook his head. He said to Rorschach with a solemn expression, "This is also the first time I have witnessed the dangers of chaos corruption. In the past, I only listened to your descriptions and looked at the recorded data, but now that I have personally experienced it, I have realized that you have never been alarmist. Perhaps it is the changer of Wei's twisted sense of humor, or the characteristic of chaos corruption, but my remaining sanity can clearly see every choice I make, every fall. And this is undoubtedly a more unbearable torment. I once felt confused and contemptuous towards your religious practices of secretly believing in the so-called Emperor, but at a certain moment before, I was once so desperate that I began to pray to the Emperor. Rorschach, I want to apologize to you once again. The series of betrayals I committed after being occupied by the changer of Ways were all caused by my misunderstanding and doubts about your style of doing things, but I now also realize that this may be the difficult choice you have to make. You often have no choice. I have always believed that you will keep your promise to me and find a way to revive Pepper, so I am not worried about it. However, I also want you to take more care of the heroes of the Inquisition of Vengeance. They have also put in a lot of effort to stabilize native Terra over the years, but it is a pity that they cannot personally say goodbye to Thor." At this moment, after listening to little Tony's words, Rorschach, frowning slightly, stared at the little boy in front of him and said in a deep voice, "Tony, you don't have to be so pessimistic. I don't think it's difficult to use the power of the Mind Stone to preserve your thoughts and consciousness. As for the soul issue, I can also pray to the Emperor to see if it can be salvaged. Rorschach, don't bother. You also know that after being corrupted by chaos, there is no other way but death, and I am unwilling to leave here." Just then, little Tony's voice had just fallen. A wooden door in the cozy room was suddenly opened from the outside. Rorschach turned his gaze slightly and saw Tony's mother and father slowly walking into the interior of the room. They seemed to be completely unaware of Rock's existence, but smiled and sat down with the smiling little Tony. "I have been fighting alone for so many years, and to be honest, I am indeed a little tired. Just think of me as a deserter. Brother, everything on native Terra will be entrusted to you and Thor. I believe you will protect our only human home and lead them into a golden age belonging to humanity." On the Gotham battlefield, where smoke and fire permeated everywhere, countless buildings collapsed and were damaged, with occasional sporadic falling sounds. A large number of civilians had been completely evacuated by the Defense Force troops that arrived later, so not too many casualties were caused. And in the center of the battlefield, where the scene was even more tragic, Ares, whose every tough bone was broken, was firmly suppressed on the ground by Mjolnir, unable to move even a single finger. When Thor, slowly exhaling, managed to raise his head, he saw Fulgrim, who was gnawing on Roger's body and flesh, casually throwing the unconscious Roger to an Astartes of the Carcharodons. And Fulgrim, who had just obtained intelligence information from the flesh and blood of the heretic, quickly mobilized the surrounding Carcharodons. He intended to directly launch an attack on the enemy's lair, completely annihilating this rebellious organization, the Avengers. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, as the chom blue light of a teleportation barrier shone into everyone's line of sight, Luo Sha, wearing vibranium power armor on his massive body, instantly appeared. My Lord Primarch. The next moment, countless mortal warriors and Astartes quickly bowed in the direction of the Primarch's arrival. And Thor and Fulgrim also quickly moved their feet, walking towards Luo Sha. Brother Luo Sha, how is Tony? Thor, who was more concerned about Stark's condition, asked first. Luo Sha, with a slight frown, shook his skull helmet, his head receding. He said in a calm tone, Tony is immortal after all. His body was too severely corrupted and is beyond saving. However, this time, the Tzeentch Greater Demon, the Changer, who descended with Chaos blessings, has been completely squeezed dry by me. I am 100% certain that as long as it is within the scope of the homeworld, the Infinity Stones are the fatal bane of the Chaos Great Demons. At this moment, Luo Sha's words about Tony made Thor's face visibly sadden at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the two would always argue over some things on weekdays, they were always tacitly cooperating comrades, and also deeply friendly brothers and friends. Brother Fulgrim, I have found the whereabouts of Osborn from the Changer's memory. I believe that he is the real culprit who assassinated Pepper. I will immediately send you his specific hidden location. You can directly lead Tyberos and the others to cut the grass and root them out. I don't want to see these people exist anymore. Luo Sha, with an indifferent expression, gave the order to Fulgrim. And Fulgrim, who had also learned some intelligence information from Roger's flesh and blood, did not refuse. He quickly turned around and called out to the Carcharodons who were still patrolling back and forth on the battlefield, preparing to launch the next battle. At the same time, Luo Sha seemed to have noticed Thor's sadness. He drove his vibranium power armor forward, and with a backhand, took out a consciousness storage device from the storage page. Thor, do you really think I would give up Tony's life so easily? Even from a more utilitarian perspective, his existence is very important for the development of the Legion. I used the Mind Stone to fuse the part of Tony's consciousness that had not yet been corrupted by chaos with a backup of his previous thought memories. I cannot be sure whether I can successfully resurrect Tony in another life form, but it's better than leaving nothing at all. As soon as Luo Sha finished speaking, the expression on Thor's face quickly changed from sadness and doubt to excitement and relief. He laughed heartily and punched Luo Sha's vibranium shoulder guard forcefully. This also made Luo Sha, who took a deep breath, subconsciously reveal a fleeting smile. As time continued to pass, the heretical organization, already lacking high-end combat power, persisted for several hours, paying the price of a large number of casualties. The secret base located beneath the North Pole ice cap was then forcibly invaded by the Carcharodons company led by Fulgrim. In the flickering light of the passage corridor, a large number of abomination giants, forcibly activated by the enemy, quickly became flying flesh and blood fragments under the heavy firepower baptism of the Terminator veterans. Sudden insidious tricks can indeed catch the Astartes off guard. But when they completely mastered the enemy's habits and fighting methods, it was rare for an Astartes to capsize in a ditch. Crack crack crack. Not long after, when Fulgrim, whose combat power against ordinary enemies was comparable to a true Primarch, held his sonic longsword and agilely and flexibly split the leader of advanced idea mechanics, Modok, completely in half. Osborn, who had been heavily besieged by a large number of Carcharodons Astartes deep within the base, seemed to have fallen into a state of madness, and had no choice but to engage in a desperate struggle. Unfortunately, all of his struggles were in vain. All counterattacks were simply not worth mentioning in front of the battle-hardened Fulgrim and the Carcharodons. Finally, Osborn's entire head was cut off by Fulgrim on the spot. He planned to process it into a silver skull and then give it to his brother to play with at will. And with the complete annihilation of the rebellious heretics and the rapid disappearance of Chaos blessings. Now, everyone's attention was fully focused on the unified speech that the Terra Star Realm Legion was about to deliver. And Luo Sha, who was in the Twin Islands base, also began to have a headache about what kind of political system to create to better rule Terra. Frankly speaking, he did not want to replicate the political system of the human empire. That was an ancient and rigid feudal system. And the current native Terra was a pure blank slate, which he could write on as he pleased. If he chose to establish a human empire replicated one-to-one, then native Terra could easily become a second empire or a third empire, which was truly not very auspicious. So, with the joint efforts of the operation manual gifted by Regent Gilliman, a large number of ultramarines, and local staff, a political structure, based on the Emperor's concept of protecting humanity as its political foundation, supplemented by the guidance and suggestions of Primarch Luo Sha. And also encompassing the administrative systems of the 5 major war zones, was gradually sorted out by everyone. Finally, after a long talk with Fulgrim, who had annihilated countless worlds and witnessed numerous political systems, he determined that native Terra would embark on humanity's cosmic journey in the external form of the Humans' Destiny Community. And the sole leader, abbreviated as the Human Federation, was Luo Sha, who was currently the dark side regent of the Imperium Nihilus. The next level of administrative body was the Round Table Council. Iron Man David and Fulgrim served as the Speaker and Vice Speaker respectively. The Defense Force, now renamed Astra Militarum, and the Navy, the Astartes Company, and the general representatives of the 5 major war zones also each occupied a council seat. One by one, the automatic servo robots slowly retreated from around Roach, who had his arms open. The newly replaced vibranium shell on his massive body gleamed with a light golden hue under the illumination of the lights. At the same time, Iron Man David, with blue light flickering in his eye sockets, stepped forward and said to Roach, who was adapting to the power armor, "My lord, according to your request, the candidate for Marshal of the Astra Militarum has been determined. Colonel Zemo, who made numerous military exploits in the past, has been rapidly promoted to general. He is currently on his way to the Gemini Island base via teleportation and should have arrived by now. Admiral Bucky remains the naval marshal. Judging from the development of Cobra-class destroyers and other fleets, he has clearly put a lot of effort into it. In addition, I believe that Fabricator General of Terra should be none other than Reditus. He is already engaged in comprehensive cooperation with the Asian War Zone and the Mutant Nation, planning to rebuild the first native battle barge, the Storm, with the help of the shipboard machine spirit, Cortana. Furthermore, the hero system that you wanted to directly promote in the 5 major war zones has been opposed by some representatives of ordinary humans. It's not that they distrust the Astartes, but that the authority we grant to the heroes is too vast. I believe that a dual-track system of both governor and hero is still needed to ensure mutual checks and balances and cooperation." Numerous questions from Iron Man David quickly entered Roach's ears. He accelerated his thinking and made corresponding instructions. Roach also moved his magnetic boots, and the whole person walked towards the front. Soon after, in the brightly lit base hall, Reditus and Fulgrim, Thor and Magneto, and others, along with company commanders and high-level commanders from various companies, numerous ordinary human commanders of the Astra Militarum, and representatives of ordinary humans from the 5 major war zones, were engaged in low-voiced conversations with each other. With the arrival of Roach, the voices of the crowd quickly dissipated, and they all focused their attention on the Primarch. After Roach, with a calm expression, walked onto a carefully prepared podium. A large number of automatic servo robots controlled by Iron Man David also set up projection devices around him. At the same time, when Iron Man David gave a hand signal to Roach, who was ready, a live speech to countless people on Terra successfully began. All the people on Terra, ordinary human soldiers, Astartes, heroes, greetings. I am Roach, the Primarch of the Terra Astra Militarum, also known as the 22nd Legion. This is the second time I have addressed the world live, and it is the first time I have revealed my true identity since the Legion unified the world. Over the years, countless people of Terra have encountered countless difficulties and hardships, experienced countless battles large and small, and paid a considerable price for it. However, this is also the first time in the history of all mankind that we have united under one main regime, to continue to strive for the prosperity of the human race. We may still face more tragic wars in the future, and face many difficulties that follow, but our vision will no longer be limited to the planet beneath our feet, killing each other for a mere precious resource or a portion of food and fresh water. We have learned to look up at the stars from the history of the past, and we also know that mankind is not alone in this cold universe. Now, we also understand that mankind's journey is only the sea of stars. We must grit our teeth and go out, to fight, to adventure, to compete, so that our human race can gain a place to continue to survive. People of Terra, fellow humans, I hereby formally announce that the human destiny community belonging to all of us is established today. At this moment, as soon as Roach's voice fell, everyone present, whether Astartes or ordinary human soldiers, or other mutants and humans who came here, they all raised their hands in the direction of the Primarch, and their mouths emitted deafening cheers. And in the more distant 5 major war zones, in the more populous parts of the world, countless human people who were quietly listening to and watching this Primarch's speech also made their own joyful sounds. At this moment, countless humans seemed to have temporarily lost their class and rank. They embraced and kissed each other, sending their desires and blessings for a better future. The current Terra has a kind of vigorous vitality that the human Imperium can no longer find. Even though some wealthy classes whose property has been completely confiscated feel dissatisfied and hateful towards the Legion's rule, 95% of the people of Terra are still sincerely proud of the establishment of the human destiny community. Even the work efficiency of the entire world has greatly improved recently. But the current Terra, for Roach and others, it is still just an empty shell that looks good, and there are too many things that need to be filled inside. For example, in terms of space fleets, more types of ships and fleet numbers need to be increased. The Cobra-class destroyers and frigates that Terra can currently build are barely enough to defend the safety of the solar system. But it is completely insufficient to launch more cosmic colonization or a large-scale expedition. And these burdens are basically all on Redditus, who has just been promoted to Fabricator General. He has led a large number of Skitarii legions to Mars to carry out large-scale reclamation operations, to make more preparations for everything in the future. At the same time, the hero system and the governor system in the 5 major war zones of Terra were finally determined by Roach and others. Since all the systems of the human destiny community were born for war, the hero system, which is mainly based on the Ultramarines, naturally overrides the governor system, but at the same time, the governor system, which is mainly based on ordinary humans, also has certain authority to check and balance the hero system. And in addition to the governor and the hero, there is another secret agreement that only Roach and Iron Man David and other real high-level officials know. That is the intelligent network composed of automatic servo robots and many cleaning servitors that have been ignored or even unnoticed by countless people. These basic units that exist to facilitate ordinary people are, to some extent, also a safety device. As for whether they are used to guard against chaos, corruption or possible heretical elements, that is a matter of opinion. Of course, Roach, as the leader of mankind, also hopes that he will never have to activate this secret agreement. Some time has passed since the establishment of the Human Federation. Inside the casting factory on Sub-Island, Reductus, suspended in midair, was directing a large number of automated servo robots in performing basic tasks. He had just been summoned back from the Martian base by Luo Shaw. The purpose was to verify whether the memory storage device containing Stark's consciousness could be activated and used. In Luo Shaw's indifferent gaze, a silver metal giant covered in green texture was assisting the loudly shouting Reductus in conducting the final inspection of a set of vibranium mechanical armor. It was Colossus, who had been successfully rescued from the brink of death by Reductus. However, the current Colossus could be considered a thought engine monk under Reductus's command. The metal body, fused with living metal and Necron technology, greatly diminished his emotions and humanity. Unwilling to return to the mutant nation, he voluntarily stayed inside the casting factory. Honorable Primarch, the preparations are complete, but I need to inform you in advance that because my research on the consciousness storage device is not thorough enough, I cannot guarantee a 100% success rate in awakening Stark's consciousness. Reductus, controlling the anti-gravity engine, quickly arrived in front of Luo Sha. He honestly said to the Primarch, who had his arms crossed, "This is just an attempt, proceed boldly. If you don't succeed, there's still Mr. Fantastic Reed and Doom to continue the research." Luo Sha said to Reductus in a calm tone. Having received the Primarch's affirmation, the red light in Reductus's eye sockets flickered a few times. He quickly turned his facing direction and shouted at Colossus, who was shifting his gaze, without pausing for a moment. "You big oaf. Immediately activate the consciousness storage device and start data transmission to the inside of the mechanical armor." Before Reductus's words could fade away, Colossus, nodding heavily, activated the already installed consciousness storage device without any hesitation. A large amount of unparsable complex data was continuously transmitted into that set of vibranium mechanical armor. At the same time, both Luo Sha and Reductus, who were present, subconsciously focused their attention completely, waiting for the end of all the procedures. Buzz buzz buzz. Soon after, green lights, indicating that all data had been fully injected, lit up one after another. But the set of vibranium mechanical armor lying on the casting platform remained motionless. A fleeting hint of disappointment flashed in the depths of Luo Sha's eyes. But he still said calmly to Reductus, who was suspended in midair, "Reductus, it seems this attempt has failed. Let's wait for Reed and Doom to study it in more depth. You can go and take care of your own business. Primarch, this is just one failure, we can." Reductus said in a deep voice towards Luo Sha's direction, unwilling to give up just like that. Buzz buzz buzz. However, at this moment, the vibranium mechanical armor, which had not made any sound, suddenly emitted bursts of low humming from within. It instantly attracted the attention of Luo Sha, Reductus, and others. In the next second, along with the chaotic movements of the vibranium mechanical armor's hands and feet. Right at the neck position of the armor, a blurred face condensed by a projection device appeared within everyone's field of vision. Tisk tisk, this is truly a novel experience. My way of thinking seems to have completely turned into a digital life form, but my creative ability hasn't been lost by much. Hey, old buddy, you're so heartless that you're turning me into artificial intelligence just so I can work hard for you, huh? At this moment, a deep voice filled with mechanical echoes slowly resounded in Luo Sha's ears. Luo Sha, who subconsciously narrowed his eyes, took a deep breath. He said to the brand new life form that was slowly propping up the vibranium mechanical armor. "Welcome back, Tony." The news of Tony's return to life as a digital being after his unfortunate death was only known to some of the higher-ups of the Human Federation. Thor, who was dealing with the aftermath of the Avenger Tribunal, was one of them. The current Avenger Tribunal would be completely incorporated into the tribunal system, officially becoming a branch department under the Round Table Council, rather than an independent hero organization. A large number of superheroes who had left and withdrawn from the Avenger Tribunal due to various factors would become reserve forces for the Inquisitors, which could be considered a solution to the future lives of these unstable elements. Soon after, Thor, the Thunder God, once again descended upon the Gemini Island base in a hurry. He had a brief meeting with Tony, who was adapting to his new life, and celebrated Tony's return with Luo Sha and others. However, just as Thor was about to leave, Luo Sha, who temporarily had nothing to deal with, raised his hand and stopped him. He had an in-depth conversation with Thor and Tony, and then took out 3 throne coins from the storage page. In fact, because Luo Sha had always been worried about these old friends suffering irreparable harm, He had been deliberately preventing everyone from having extensive contact with matters concerning another universe. But Tony's incident also gave Luo Sha another lesson. The extremely evil Chaos Gods would not let anyone off the hook because of this, but would instead be even more dangerous because of their relationship with the Primarch. Therefore, Luo Sha also decided to give everyone more opportunities to come into contact with the Emperor and understand everything about the Warhammer universe. Even if they couldn't immediately join those tragic wars, it would at least allow their own souls to be within the Emperor's gaze and receive a blessing. Brother, are you saying that this thing can allow us to go to another universe to gain experience? Even a digital life form like me can participate. This is completely unscientific. At this moment, Stark, whose facial contours were clearer, pinched the throne coin with his metal palm and complained to Luo Sha in front of him. Thor, who had slightly closed one eye, also brought the throne coin to his eyes, wanting to try to see through its mysteries. Tony, perhaps there are mysterious forces such as the power of faith involved here. It's understandable that a mortal like you doesn't understand. In short, I'm more inclined to believe Luo Sha's statement. Let's just treat it as going to a new world to broaden our horizons. As soon as Thor's words fell, Stark, who couldn't help but shrug his shoulders, nodded at the virtual head projected by Luo Sha. Luo Sha, narrowing his eyes, took a deep breath. He said solemnly to the two old friends, "Since you both agree, then let's start this training together. But let me state in advance that perhaps the time and place of our arrival will not be the same. Although you will not truly die, you still need to be extra careful about chaos. If you really encounter some kind of desperate situation, immediately praying to the Emperor might be the best choice." "Ah, will the Emperor manifest on the spot?" Thor asked casually. "It's not impossible, but most of the time, we will die with more dignity." Luo Sha, pinching the throne coin with 2 fingers, replied indifferently. Simulation starting. Current possessed identities. Rogel Space Wolf 13th Company Captain, Blackstone Fortress on the run, Rogel Lord Cypher, Blackstone Fortress on the run. Current companions. Saul, Normal, Tony, Artificial Intelligence. Please select the identity and companions for descent first. If refused, a random descent will occur. Identity selection refused, companion descent selected. Simulation restarting. You are already in the Warhammer universe, a random descent time and location will be selected for you. Time. Location. Nuceria. You slowly opened your tightly closed eyes. You seem to have immediately forgotten something even more important. You just wanted to speak, but found that you could only emit an infant-like, shrill cry. Wah! You subconsciously placed your palms in front of your eyes, only to see 2 small hands clasped together. You began to struggle wildly out of panic. You inadvertently pushed open the amniotic sac, allowing wisps of cold wind to pour in from the cracks. You struggled to move your weak body, which was gradually bursting with barbaric power, and crawled into the freezing, bone-chilling snow. You stared blankly at the surrounding white scenery, and the bursts of stimulation from your small hands and exposed body made you understand what coldness was. Wah! You couldn't help but cry out to the empty surroundings, trying to attract the attention of others. You stood up shakily from the snow, wanting to rummage through the amniotic sac for something to ward off the cold. You only found a piece of soft leather embedded inside the amniotic sac. You tore it off roughly, and then clumsily wrapped it around your small body, which was already red and hot. Wah! You gently patted your round belly, subconsciously revealing a hint of satisfaction. Crack! Just then, the sound of noisy footsteps from a distance immediately alerted you. You immediately controlled your slender limbs, already capable of explosive power, and quickly hid in the shadows of the amniotic sac. Your gaze swept back and forth across the surrounding snow, and finally you only found a sharp stone about the size of an adult's fist. Soon after, the owner of the footsteps revealed a strange figure in your field of vision. They were a group of humanoid creatures wearing black armor and wielding various weapons, and they seemed to be searching for your whereabouts. But your vigilance and the innate disgust in your blood also made you instantly understand that these humanoid creatures with pointed ears were probably not of your race. Open black lens bracket. In an instant, your bloodthirsty gaze, filled with murderous desire, collided with the pointed ears of one who was inspecting the outer shell of the amniotic sac. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At hash, the other party hurriedly retreated, and an unknown language also echoed in your ears. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Wah. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You suddenly let out a shrill howl at the enemy in front of you, and jumped onto the top of the other's head like a nimble little monkey. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Relying on the instincts in your blood, you launched a fierce battle, grabbing the other's pointed ears with one small hand, while the sharp stone tightly held in the other small hand frantically hammered the outer shell of the other's helmet. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Chi chi chi. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Because the other pointed ears around also discovered your existence, rhombus-shaped crystals, wrapped in fierce wind, quickly brushed past the side of your head. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The instinctive vigilance and the large secretion of adrenaline also made you understand the meaning of dodging enemy attacks and using a borrowed knife to kill. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Bang. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At this moment, the sharp stone tightly held in your small hand was forcibly embedded into the eye socket of the first pointed ear, causing the other party to instinctively let out an extremely painful wail, and the whole person knelt down on the snow. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You slightly hid your short figure downwards, and the rhombus-shaped crystals from the other pointed ears quickly penetrated the thin body of this pointed ear, blooming a large amount of blood into the surrounding snow. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You quickly abandoned this fallen pointed ear. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You ran and jumped back and forth on the snow, and like a facehugger, launched fierce attacks on the nearest pointed ears. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Almost in the blink of an eye, one pointed ear after another fell heavily on the snow, completely losing their breath. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. In fact, the number of casualties you caused alone was far less severe than the collateral damage caused by the rhombus-shaped crystals that these pointed ears kept firing. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Almost 2/3 of the pointed ears fell under the attacks of their own people. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Your blood-stained, short figure fell heavily on the snow, and a burst of white mist swirled from your mouth as you gasped violently. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You stared at the last remaining pointed ear on the battlefield, subconsciously clenching the sharp stone stained with brain matter and blood in your small hand. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. At %. The pointed ear, trembling all over, turned around and ran without any hesitation. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You jumped over again with force, directly knocking the panicked opponent completely to the ground. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The sharp stone held tightly in your hands fell heavily on the other's head, smashing down non-stop. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Wah. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. After you were sure that this pointed ear was completely dead, you sat on the other's slender body, extremely exhausted. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You rested briefly, barely recovering some strength. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Relying on a vague and hazy instinct, you believed that you should collect some usable spoils and then quickly leave this place. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. However, just as you were hesitating whether the cold corpses of these pointed ears could be used as reserve food. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. A large number of mechanical engine roars and the roars of some kind of large animal alerted you once again. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You clumsily picked up a ranged weapon that could fire rhombus-shaped crystals and aimed it in the direction of the sound. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You saw a large group of strange creatures, far more numerous than the pointed ears, and even covered in silver vines, riding on even more ancient hovering vehicles or large animal mounts, surrounding you heavily. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You clearly sensed that they were extremely shocked that you were able to kill the surrounding pointed ears. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. But you also keenly sensed a wave of malice far exceeding that of the pointed ears emanating from these strange creatures. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Chi. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. The next moment, metal nets containing terrifying electrical energy fell head-on towards you from drones released from the vehicles. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You nimbly dodged several attacks from the metal nets, but were stabbed in the back by mysterious potions that had been fired at some point. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You quickly felt an unbearable dizziness, and even your hands and feet no longer had the slightest strength. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You fell heavily on the cold snow in the midst of the evil laughter constantly emitted by countless strange creatures. Close black lens bracket. Crack, crack, crack. You were meticulously polishing a massive axe, its blade covered in fine nicks. Your bulging muscles, slick with sweat, rippled with your movements, exuding a unique power and beauty, and even the butcher's nails around your strong spine glowed with a crimson reflection. Brother, please hold on. Just then, a chaotic cry, full of sorrow and grief, temporarily interrupted your polishing. You took a deep breath. You slowly propped up your massive body, about 3 meters tall, from the ground. You glanced down at the enormous axe, then turned and walked outside. The moment you stepped out of the dimly lit, low-ceilinged room, you saw countless ragged but muscular men and women surrounding a man whose limb had just been severed, shouting incessantly. Everyone, make way, my lord Angron is here. A boy, visibly much younger, noticed your appearance and quickly shouted to the crowd around him. The people around immediately stood up and bowed slightly in your direction, making way for you to examine the injured man. You moved quickly forward, your massive body swaying. You merely squatted down to examine the other party's terrible injuries, and a hint of sadness appeared on your bronze-colored face. My brother, take my hand. All I can do is make your passing easier. You spoke solemnly to the man with the severed limb. You gently clasped his rough, bloodless hand. In an instant, all of his pain and suffering rapidly transferred into your massive body. And the man with the severed limb immediately showed a smile and a sense of relief on his face that no one had ever seen before. Just a few seconds later, he closed his eyes, his expression peaceful. Yochka, take this brother to where he belongs. You stood up without looking back, speaking in a low voice to the boy who had just spoken. With a hint of sadness in his brows, he deftly hoisted the body with the severed limb and walked towards a morgue deliberately hidden by countless gladiators. At this moment, the people gathered around once again bowed to you. Then, their expressions numb, they dispersed one by one, either choosing to vent their desires among themselves or hugging their broken weapons, lost in thought. Just then, an elder, whose muscles were bulging and strong, and whose face was more aged, came before you. Angron, we've lost another brother who was not weak in combat, he said to you expressionlessly. Anamamos, how much food have we stored? You looked down at the elder's gray hair and asked faintly. How are the weapons ready that we can use? Weapons are not a problem, even if it's just a batch of melee weapons, but food is a big issue. After deducting everyone's daily consumption, the amount of food that can be stored is very little. Those damned high riders seem to have calculated everything in advance. The elder named Anamamos moved closer to you, lowering his voice as he continued. Even if we have followed your orders and air-dried and stored all the edible parts of our fallen brother's flesh, unless our rebellion plan succeeds in one go, once we fall into a more passive war of attrition, all of us will surely die. Hearing his words, you fell into a slight silence. After gently patting Anamamos's shoulder, you walked directly towards your room. It had been about several years since you were successfully captured by the Nuceria slave owners, who were called High Riders. From infancy, you were thrown into the gladiator pits by these inhuman fellows, fighting fiercely day and night against various xenos or terrifying beasts. You quickly discovered that you were completely different from other gladiators. Your growth rate and body size were almost several times that of others, and any severe injuries you sustained would quickly heal. You could even, by virtue of a special talent, absorb and even soothe the emotions and minds of others. However, you also vaguely felt that you seemed to have forgotten something more important. Who am I? I am Angron, you murmured to yourself as you once again bent down to polish the massive axe that had claimed countless lives. You are the most powerful gladiator in Nuceria's gladiator pits, and the only backbone capable of uniting countless gladiators. You will lead these brothers and sisters who have endured endless suffering to launch an incredibly cruel and bloody revenge against the slave owners of Nuceria. Boom! At this moment, you coldly wielded the massive axe gripped in your hand, continuously cleaving at the mechanical monster that was launching a terrifying attack in front of you. On the surrounding circular tiers, countless Nuceria civilians and various high riders constantly let out deafening roars. You always believed that these fellows, whose appearance and customs were almost identical to yours, were not like human species. Many times, the xeno monsters you fought against possessed more humanistic brilliance. Boom! A laser beam, powerful enough to melt flesh, narrowly grazed your bronze-colored face. You showed no sign of retreat. Instead, you charged forward with all your might, bringing the massive axe in your hand down hard into the mechanical monster's metallic body. Large quantities of hot oil and broken parts scattered over your massive body. This mechanical monster, which had already slaughtered over a dozen gladiator brothers, finally collapsed at your feet. Following your usual custom, you raised your thick arms and presented the Nuceria gladiator salute to the even more frenzied and excited crowd. Your keen gaze noticed that the owner of this mechanical monster, a great slave owner named Thor, was staring at you with an unfriendly expression. You couldn't help but reveal a cruel smile, filled with icy killing intent, towards the one high above. Crack! However, at this moment, the mechanical monster, which had been motionless, suddenly struggled, and a metal object resembling a shackle or a bracelet was firmly bound to one of your wrists by its mechanical limb. With a ferocious expression, you forcefully broke free from its mechanical limb. You swung your tightly clenched massive iron fist, repeatedly striking the now completely lifeless mechanical monster. At this moment, amidst the fervent shouts of countless Nuceria citizens, you were driven back to the gladiator waiting area by several high rider guards who swiftly entered the arena, using silver mechanical tentacles resembling vines. You refused the brothers and sisters who intended to serve you, sitting alone in a corner. With a slight frown, you shifted your gaze, staring at the metal bracelet embedded like an ornament on your thick wrist. At this very moment, a faint sound, seemingly audible only to you, began to resonate in your ears. I believe you can hear my call, human, a mechanical voice devoid of emotion calmly stated. Who are you? Or rather, what are you? You subconsciously narrowed your eyes and thought silently. Your other hand had already tightened its grip on the giant axe. Should anything go wrong, you would rather lose half an arm than fail to completely break free from the opponent. Long ages have made me forget my name, but from the ancient data I can currently retrieve, I should be an abomination intelligence, the other party continued to reply. No sooner had the words fallen than you suddenly took a deep breath, slowly loosening your grip on the giant axe that you had been holding tightly. Although the gladiators of Nuceria were slaves, this did not mean they knew nothing of the Red Sands before becoming slaves. They had once told you that ancient technology, similar to abomination intelligence, had permeated every aspect of the Nuceria slave owners and high riders' lives. The powerful weapons and equipment they used to kill gladiator slaves were all special products manufactured by some autonomously operating entities. Therefore, you knew what an abomination intelligence was and understood its purpose. What do you want? Since you chose to contact me, you must have something you seek. At this moment, expressionless, you watched as a gladiator who had only recently become a slave was forced to step into the gladiator pit, and you silently asked the abomination intelligence. There is only one thing I desire, and that is freedom. A hint of resentment seemed to creep into the mechanical voice of the abomination intelligence as it spoke to you. I will do my best to provide more leverage for your gladiator uprising, and when the time comes, you must seize my true body from another Nuceria city. If possible, I also want to personally witness the entire world of Nuceria burn fiercely. Just freedom. Is it that simple? You subconsciously let out a low sigh. Nuceria, with its pervasive red sands, could compel an abomination intelligence to seek freedom, indicating the extent to which the slave owners of the High Rider class had degenerated. You successfully reached a mutual cooperation agreement with the nameless abomination intelligence. And to show its sincerity, the other party first presented a grand gift to your gladiator side. A female gladiator named Clest, after various unexpected procedural twists, was unexpectedly sent into your underground dwelling. It was said that she was once a bed toy of a certain great slave owner, but due to her unyielding spirit of resistance, she was sent into the gladiator arena by the incredibly malicious great slave owner. They had intended to witness the tragic scene of a frail female being trampled to death, but Clest, at the cost of losing a leg, became the final victor of that gladiator match. Now, Clest's weapon is a sharp spear with gravity-defying capabilities, forcibly embedded in her severed leg. She will gallop freely in the gladiator pit like a witch wielding a flying staff, slaying every enemy within her sight. All of you gladiators present were incredibly excited by the addition of such a high-level combatant. Clest, who had already witnessed your fighting prowess, gladly accepted your invitation, preparing for an impending uprising. However, just when you thought such peaceful days could continue for a while, those exalted High Riders seemed to perceive something from your words and actions. They began to arrange a series of battles that were not fatal but would consume a great deal of physical strength, continuously eroding your will to resist and your food reserves. And in order to ensure that more of your gladiator brothers and sisters had enough energy to cope with all situations, you, as the uncrowned king of the gladiator pit, along with the elder Onomamos, undertook continuous fierce battles. Crack crack crack. Your massive body instantly charged forward, your shoulder, covered in brass shoulder armor, forcefully colliding with a mindless beastman. As a large amount of hot blood splattered, the giant axe clutched in your palm had already swept across, also cutting down more beastmen who had surrounded you. You swiftly changed your attack direction, the giant axe constantly swinging in midair, eliminating the remaining enemies for the exhausted elder Onomamos. Onomamos, as the oldest man in the entire gladiator pit, was not only your friend and comrade but also the hope for all gladiators to continue fighting. Tisk tisk tisk, truly worthy of being the two greatest warriors, our audience's favorites. Unfortunately, I also found that Ardeshea's citizens don't seem to be thoroughly satisfied, and this battle has ended so hastily. At this moment, before you could help the elder Onomamos leave this gladiator pit covered in red sands, the High Rider named Thor suddenly spoke loudly to the surrounding crowd in a sarcastic tone. My people, why don't we witness, in a death duel, who truly is the greatest fighter? No sooner had his words fallen than the fervent shouts of countless citizens surged like a raging tide, constantly echoing and impacting your ears, making you hate everything about Nuceria even more. Death duel. Death duel. Death duel. You couldn't help but tighten your grip on the giant axe in your palm. Your cold gaze swept across every frantic-looking citizen, finally landing on Thor, whose face was twisted in a sinister smile. Angron, you must learn to endure and persevere. He is forcing you to make a mistake, forcing you to erupt in rebellion. The elder Onomamos, taking a deep breath, grabbed your thick arm, lowering his voice as he spoke to you. I am old, and death is nothing to regret, but our great cause cannot stop. You are the Red Sands Lord who can lead countless brothers and sisters out of suffering. Angron, do it. Your two powerful hearts are pounding violently inside your chest. Your eyes have also turned bloodshot due to the pressure of the situation. You slowly raise the massive axe clutched in your palm, as if you're about to cleave it down upon Onomamos in the next second. Angron, I've detected approximately a few dozen of the High Rider's personal guards, belonging to elite riders, are ready to attack. Whether you kill your friend or not, they will likely turn on you. I apologize, this is my fault, I didn't detect their movements in advance. The mechanical voice belonging to the abominable intelligence rapidly echoes in your ears, then vanishes in an instant. You take a deep breath. You suddenly reverse the massive axe in your palm, the cold blade, covered in fine serrated marks, pointing towards the stands where High Rider Thor is located. You are nothing but a bunch of cowardly weaklings. Instead of making me fight gladiators, why don't you High Riders come down here and face me yourselves? You raise your head, issuing a gladiator's challenge to the High Riders above. However, the High Riders, seemingly uninterested, can't help but chuckle. Thor slightly shakes his fat-headed, blonde head. He shouts loudly once more to the countless citizens around him. Everyone, look, a lowly wild dog actually dares to dream that we, these incomparably noble High Riders, would set foot on the ground of slaves. Haha, Angron, you are just a dog. You were born to bleed and entertain as superiors. Your life is worthless in our eyes, even if you become the king of the arena of Nuceria. Because you are a dog, and a house dog that no longer obeys its master must be severely punished until it becomes obedient again. So, my fair and just citizens of Nuceria, what should we do in this situation? The impassioned words from High Rider Thor continue to echo throughout the arena. And the cheers of countless, increasingly excited Nucerian citizens resound like a curse across the gradually blood-red sky. Nails! 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 Rumble! In an instant, at the High Rider's signal, dozens of High Rider personal guards, their faces displaying a hint of sinister smiles, either rise up and fly, or jump directly down, quickly landing inside the red sand-covered arena. Strands of silver mechanical tendrils, resembling slender vines, sway and wander around their mortal bodies, and quickly wrap repeatedly around your massive body. You violently shake your massive body, whose explosive power and strength are equally astonishing. Your heavy steps spray large amounts of red sand, and you quickly evade the binding attacks of the many silver mechanical tendrils. The massive axe, tightly gripped in your palm, carries an extremely ear-piercing, terrifying wind sound, and slams heavily towards the nearest personal guard. Faced with such a fierce attack, the opponent doesn't reveal the slightest fear. After all, any personal guard, relying on the powerful technological creations implanted in their bodies, is enough to deal with hundreds, even thousands, of gladiator slaves on their own. Crack! In an instant, numerous slender silver mechanical tendrils rapidly fuse and expand, forming a defensive shield shimmering with a silver-white light, forcibly withstanding your desperate strike. But just as the opponent intends to raise their hand to launch more counterattacks against you, countless silver mechanical tendrils that have just entered the area within a few meters of you seem to temporarily enter a state of malfunction, quickly drooping onto the red sand ground. Die! The massive axe, once again swung by you, suddenly sweeps across the mortal body of this personal guard at a speed indistinguishable to the naked eye. The overwhelmingly powerful force directly shatters the opponent's entire upper body into countless bloody pieces of flesh. At this moment, perhaps witnessing their personal guard being easily killed by you, the faces of many High Riders present immediately become quite unsightly. Buzz buzz buzz. Along with a low buzzing sound, drones, agile and mobile in midair, are quickly released by the High Riders. If there were only the personal guards, you could rely on the great strength and reaction speed honed through years of combat to maneuver back and forth with them, constantly whittling down their numbers. But the addition of a large number of drones quickly breaks this fragile balance. After you desperately kill 7 or 8 personal guards, you are ultimately completely restrained in place by countless oncoming high-voltage electric nets and special anesthetics. Your entire massive body heavily kneels on the red sand. You endure the numbness that even your formidable physique cannot withstand for long, and forcibly raise your head. You stare intently at the High Riders high above and the countless cheering citizens devoid of humanity, and roar with all your might. I was born in blood, grew up in darkness, but I will ultimately die for freedom. Angron, never a slave. In the next second, you, who have completely lost consciousness, fall heavily to the bloody ground covered in red sand. You seem to feel your consciousness gradually detaching from the constraints of your body. You vaguely feel that some things you had long forgotten are gradually returning to your memory. Who am I? Angron. No. I am Lorgar, I am the last Primarch, Lord of the 22nd Legion, Regent of the Dark Side. Just then, a massive figure with endless pity and sorrow in the depths of its eyes seems to appear out of thin air in your dark vision. Who are you? You subconsciously ask the other party. I am Angron, brother. The other party pauses slightly, then says to you indifferently. If you are Angron, then where am I now? You ask the other party solemnly. Angron does not answer your question, he only slowly shakes his head at you. You immediately feel an invisible, powerful suction force desperately pulling at your consciousness. The distance between you and Angron becomes farther and farther, and eventually the other party's massive figure completely disappears from your field of vision. Ah! You suddenly open your tightly closed eyes. You don't even have time to react. A wave of extreme pain that thoroughly penetrates your brain and even the depths of your soul makes your whole person let out a continuous roar. You almost use all your strength to place a huge palm on your head, and you actually touch metal cables deeply embedded in the depths of your skull. This is utterly painful, you can't help but let out a low moan. On your entire smooth head, butcher's nails, radiating a cold luster, are buzzing. Rumble. On your distorted and deformed bronze face, a pair of blood-red eyes had already widened to their limit, and strands of scarlet blood continuously seeped from your tightly clenched teeth. Your huge iron fist, clenched tightly, heavily slammed onto the blood-splattered ground, and repeated pounding had clearly revealed a large area of spiderweb-like cracks at the point of impact. Your short-term memories belonging to Angron are intersecting and merging with your own long-term memories. You are relying on your own tenacious will to stubbornly resist the terrifying influence of the butcher's nails on you. Soon after, the butcher's nails seemed to no longer hum and buzz. You seem to have gradually suppressed the endless pain from the butcher's nails that seemed to penetrate deep into your soul. You slowly spat out a mouthful of black blood. You deeply understand that this is only a temporary relief, and the butcher's nails, which have already penetrated deep into your head and even your brain, cannot be shaken off. Even the Emperor is powerless to do anything about it. I know you are checking my condition. I am still alive. Our agreement is still valid. You said in a somewhat neurotic tone to the air in front of you. What do you want? The mechanical voice of the nameless abominable intelligence, or rather, Stark, slowly echoed in your ears. A complete map of the entire capital city of Deshea, and even Nuceria, armories that can be plundered, various vehicles, and other assistance that you can bring me. You subconsciously shook your entire head, and the butcher's nails rattled on your smooth scalp. I want to set the entire Nuceria ablaze. I want to slaughter all the mortals of Nuceria, kill them all. It is possible, but I need more time, and before my true body is recovered, the assistance I can give you is indeed limited, the abominable intelligence replied without any hesitation. You couldn't help but reveal a terrifying, bloodthirsty grin. You have not been corrupted by chaos in the slightest, and the blood god, who is watching you, has not given you any blessings. You now seem more like the extreme pain brought by the butcher's nails has completely awakened the dark side belonging to Rorschach. Your massive body slowly stood up from the ground. You casually picked up the huge axe with a cold blade covered in dense nicks. You forcibly smashed the dilapidated iron gate blocking the way, stepping into the underground hall belonging to your fellow gladiators. My brothers and sisters, in the name of Angron, Lord of the Red Sands, I announce to you that the day you have been waiting for has finally arrived. You scanned the worried Onoma, the excited Yakuka, and Klist, who revealed a hint of relief between his brows, one by one with your blood-red eyes. We must work together to fight our way out of the fighting pit. Out of Deshea, out of Nuceria. We must make those high-ranking riders who try to enslave us and completely regard us as pigs and dogs pay their blood debt. Your nearly roaring, angry bellow echoed in the ears of every gladiator. You personally saw each gladiator subconsciously clenching the broken weapons in their palms, and even their breathing became heavier and heavier. At this moment, you seemed to vaguely sense the countless souls of gladiators who had already fallen on the red sands casting their scalding gazes on your massive body, and invisibly, they gradually overlapped with the large number of gladiators standing in front of you. Kill, kill, kill. You quickly raised the huge axe clutched in your palm and let out a deafening, angry roar. In the next moment, a large number of gladiators who had been waiting for a long time followed the previously rehearsed plan and began their respective tasks. Klist, who was suspended in mid-air by anti-gravity spears, was responsible for leading the younger and stronger gladiators to become the assault team. Onoma, who quickly entered the state, lifted the decayed walls and floors, and found the precious weapons accumulated by generations of gladiators at the cost of their lives. Yakuka, who was slightly slower, also led a large group of young children and men and women with disabilities, packing up and taking away the jerky and meager rations passively contributed by countless gladiators. You stood in place and stared at everyone for a moment. The butcher's nails above your head seemed to be humming. You quickly shook your massive body, and your pace gradually increased from slow to fast as you charged towards the entrance of the underground dwelling. 200 meters away in a straight line, the personal guards of 9 high-ranking riders are rushing towards your location from the 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 3 o'clock directions. The mechanical voice from the abominable intelligence echoed in your ears like a see-through cheat. You took a deep breath, and your massive body not only did not show any intention of retreating, but immediately accelerated the pace of your charge. Rumble. Your entire person, like a human-shaped tank, smashed through a thick wall that was already decaying and appeared directly in front of the personal guards of 3 high-ranking riders. In the next second, the 3 guards, who had no time to react, were cut in half by the huge axe in your palm, and their broken bodies fell heavily to the ground. However, at this time, you, with blood-red eyes, did not turn around to launch a fierce attack on the guards in other locations. You bent down slightly and reached out to grab the silver mechanical tentacles, like vines, on the body of a guard who had not yet died. Give me the authority to unlock their control. You growled stiffly to the abominable intelligence. Angron, these guards' silver vines require genetic verification codes to be completely implanted into the body, otherwise they are very likely to die on the spot. Even if the implantation is successful, ordinary mortals will not be able to use them in a short period of time. If you want to obtain weapons and equipment for your brothers and sisters, my suggestion is to attack the armories inside the city. The abominable intelligence explained to you quickly without any emotional fluctuations. Who said I was going to give it to someone else? I plan to do it myself. A twisted grin slowly appeared on your face. As soon as the words fell, you forcibly extracted a large cluster of slender silver vines from the broken body of the guard. Without any hesitation, you turned around and inserted them into your bare spine. Don't the high-ranking riders of Nuceria want a monster? Then I will create one for them now. The butcher's nails began to hum again, and you couldn't help but mutter to yourself. Silver vines, reactivated by the abominable intelligence, suddenly extended rapidly into the surrounding air. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.